Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Planning Board meeting of September 2nd, 2020. Sarah, all the taxes done?
Yes.
And we will not be doing minutes tonight because the minutes of the last meeting, there was a computer glitch, and the minutes of last meeting will be looked at next month with tonight's meeting at the same time. Moving right along, the order for this evening, let me get a little closer. Number one will be 2020-18, 11 Beechwood. Number two, it would be 2020-12, 79 South Continent. Number three, 2018-05. It's a revision at 26 Lewis Road. Number four, 2020-22, 16 Hillside Terrace. Number five, 2020, a lot of 20s, 9 Stearns Ridge. Number six, 2020-19, 45 Station Road. Number seven, 2020-17, 31 Matheson. Number seven, that was number eight, 2020-24, 34 Lewis Road. And number nine, 2020-23, 2 South Astor Street. All right, starting with number one, 2020-18, 11 Beechwood Road, Evan and Allison Barth.
Just asking anyone representing any application to click the raised hand button so I know to promote you to a panelist.
Is anybody here for 11 Beechwood?
Yes.
Sarah, did anybody raise their hand?
Yes, they did.
Hello.
Yes. Good evening.
Good evening. Stephen Bassini, the architect for the applicant. Shall I begin?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So I had received the memo from George Palmer dated September 1st with a few additional comments. And as you know, we received an extensive memo before the last meeting, which I had addressed upwards of 20 comments. I think you saw the letter that was attached. Hopefully I pointed out all the items that were revised to your satisfaction. And I know that there was a couple additional. So if I'll just go through those, but the first off, the addition of the drawing set, which is C102, which you'd asked to provide. Shall I share that with the screen right now just to discuss?
All right, go ahead.
Thank you.
If you can.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so I had prepared this to show there's a request of the Han Engineering memo to show the comparable house sizes in the area, the scale of the existing houses in the area. So what you'll see there is number 11 is the applicant's property. I showed 2 to one side, 3 to the other, 4 across the street, and then 1 directly behind it. So you can see from there, and you can see from the aerial view that they're all comparable house sizes. However,
Go back to the red boxes again.
sure, yeah,
I presume the yellow is the extension.
that is correct.
Okay.
So going from here to the table, you can see that all the lots in that area all have the same size. Basically, it's all part of a subdivision, so they're all just over 20,000 square feet, except for 48 Butterwood, which is the property directly behind it here. They all have the same required FAR based on their lot size. And then taking an estimate from visual inspections of the homes, from the outside, from the street, obviously, and making deductions for the garage and such, I came up with these estimated FARs for those houses. Over here, you can see that out of the 11 properties that were analyzed, 8 of them are under the required FAR, and 3 of them are further under the applicant's request of 3,323 square feet. And then another 4 of them have more of a higher FAR than that. And then, of course, there are 3 of them, you'll see these houses here, that are over 968, 150, and 1050. Obviously, this is an anomaly here. This is property behind it on a different street, different neighborhood. But basically, the average is about 3,300. The average is about 3,600 square feet of an FAR, and which is 356 square feet above what my client is asking. So I do believe it falls within the character of the neighborhood as far as bulk and size. So I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to go over to the site plan. There was, in reference to the comment form from Han today, as far as the inspection port, there were 4 items on there. One of them was about the inspection port here in the drainage. I'm not sure. Oh, Doug, I see Doug here. Doug, normally we do a clean out with a grate on top for an overflow. I noticed in the comments it says that it's not sufficient. I mean, I don't know if there's another model of something, a Nyloplast, different model that we can use, but standard is to specify one of those Nyloplast models with a grate on top, which is what I did. I wasn't sure if there's something else I can substitute for that, but I would gladly do that.
Where just point out real quick where it is. We can do this offline also, because I'm
I
not sure.
figured as much, but there were only a few comments I figured I'd address them. But yeah, the inspection port is here, and on the detail sheet, it's right here, and it's called out as a grate or a solid color cover. I can remove the word solid cover, but that's basically the inspection port.
Okay. I mean, ideally, it'd be before it, but that's fine.
Okay. So we can go through that. There was another comment on here about the coverage data sheet, and that was an error. There was a request to correct the square footage, which I did right here for the lot.
I would say just submit it. I mean, it's an easy change. These are minor comments.
Yeah. Okay. No problem. Well, then I'll move on. Thank you.
But Ed and Doug, the coverage is satisfied, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it needs a variance, but yeah, we're satisfied with it.
We're okay with the number.
Thank you. So then the only other comment I saw on there was the landscape. And I just wanted to address that. So we had, I'd laid out some things, and obviously, she is the expert. So Ms. Nolan is the expert. And so I would love to go through that with her and see what she feels is appropriate. I mean, I think I have some different data than she does as far as the landscape varieties and what's hardy and what's not, what's deer resistant. But I would acquiesce to her, and I would gladly go through those with her. I don't want that to hold up the application, because I believe obviously she knows better what's hardy in Irvington and what the deer eat better there. So we'll make some revisions according to her input. I would reach out to her. Okay. As far as the canopy tree is concerned, I would also like to visit that at another point. But as I went through with Doug originally, when we were looking at this and we were going through the comments, and I went through with Mrs. Nolan as well, and there are trees, if you're looking at the site plan here, there are trees in this area off this corner that are 4 to 6 inch caliper trees. There's 2 triple trees that are growing off of this here. So the canopy on this side of the property is substantial. And off to the driveway over here, there's a very large evergreen that is looming over both these houses, which is creating a nice a canopy, I believe, here. The only portion that she's asking about is, I guess, from here to here along the space of the property. And right now, the client has young children who play in the front yard and ride their bike in the street. And she's really asking if there's another option, or if we can just leave that out and prepare the landscaping here, because any type of tree trunk in this area where children wait for the bus stop and things, she's hesitant to do. Plus, also, she does like that as an area for her children to play in. If it's something that we can revisit, maybe when we come back, I would ask to do that. But at this point, I did not show anything.
Okay, that's fine. It was more of a recommendation than a requirement.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
And the same with the deer resistant, and we'd like you to fix that.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to hold up anything.
Okay, appreciate it. Either way,
are you done, or are you have more?
I'm done. I'll stop that.
Okay. Do we have any comment from the board? Kevin? You're muted, Kevin.
Nope.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dan?
I'm all set here, Caesar. Thank you.
George?
Yeah, I think the scale's fine because it's only 1 story, and even though the 2 properties adjacent to it are smaller, they have all the right to go to beyond what this guy Steve is proposing. So I have no bulk issues.
I just remembered one last question. I think it was fixed, but I want it for the record. The front yard setback, was that fixed? There was a question with the corner of the extension. A small piece of the corner of the extension might have been in the front yard setback. Was that fixed?
I didn't change anything, but I think what the comment was is that Mr. Mara was saying I should have a surveyor out there to stake that before we do anything to make sure it's where it needs to be. And I did make that note on the plan.
Okay. Any comment from the public? Sarah, anybody out there?
Nobody's raised their hand.
Okay. I think we have a resolution. If anybody on the board objects to a resolution, I think Mary Ann has one. Board,
All right,
okay?
maybe I'll read it first and see if they.
Okay.
Whereas in August 2020, Evan and Allison Barth applied for site development plan approval to construct an addition, walkway, and stormwater management system at their house at 11 Beechwood Road, where the improvements require a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals for coverage. Han Engineering reviewed the plans, and in a memorandum dated July 31st listed a number of engineering issues, most of which were addressed in a subsequent submission. Suzanne Nolan, the village's landscape architect, reviewed the plans and made several recommendations. Planning Board held a public hearing on the application on August 5th and September 2nd. It's type 2 action under SECRA. Therefore, be it resolved that the Planning Board grants the application for site development plan approval of the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled Mr. and Mrs. Evan and Allison Barth. And they're detailed, subject to 1, receiving a coverage variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals, 2, complying with the items listed in the Han memorandum dated September 1st, 2020, and complying with the recommendations in the memorandum from Suzanne Nolan dated September 1st, 2020.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept the resolution? Somebody?
Motion
Yes.
to accept said resolution.
I think George made the motion and Dan seconded. All in
Yes.
favor?
Aye.
Well,
Right.
and everybody also should
Oh.
vote to authorize Sarah to sign for them.
All right, go ahead, Kevin. Authorization for
vote-
Sarah.
I vote yes and authorize Sarah to sign on my behalf.
Dan,
Vote yes and authorize Sarah to sign the resolution.
George?
Authorize and allow Sarah to sign for me.
Yes, and authorize Sarah to sign.
Sarah,
it's-
I need to say, Sarah, I know I sent you the resolution earlier. I just noticed a typo. So I'm going to send you a revised one.
Okay.
You don't have to answer, just so you know. Okay.
Okay, Stephen Bassini, you're all set?
Thanks very much for everybody. Have a good night.
I have one question which I never asked before. How does the applicant get a copy of the signed resolution? Mary Ann?
Oh, I don't know. I don't go. I don't.
We put it in the building permit application.
I know, if this was live, you'd hand it to him, but,
And Caesar, we put it in the building permit application.
okay.
So when they receive when they receive all their paperwork, their approvals and all their resolutions are in there.
Okay,
Chairman,
Very
may I ask one question just to confirm about the ZBA, that September 22nd, I still have time, I'm assuming, to apply for that.
Tuesday.
It's Tuesday, this coming Tuesday. Okay.
Yeah.
Do I need anything from you as far as that resolution or anything to submit with
The denial letter will be there waiting for you.
Thank you very much.
you're all set.
Thanks very much.
All right, don't forget to sign off,
You got it.
to sign out of the meeting.
You got it.
All right, moving along to number 2, 2020-12, 7-9 South Continent Street. Check. Sarah, we got John here or somebody. Oh, there he is. Good evening.
Yes.
You're all set, John.
So
The only
we
thing,
received,
we sent you to the ARB and go ahead.
Yeah, so we received the the approval for demolition in the historic district. And so the only item remaining that we believe is remaining is the variance for FAR, and it's a reduction of current FAR. So I think we had sent you guys a letter asking for conditional approval, so that we can expedite moving forward. And I certainly would be looking for referral to the ZBA.
Okay, any comment from the board? Dan,
I'm all set, Caesar. Thank you.
Kevin,
Oh, thank you.
George?
Good, I'm good.
I'm good. Any public comment, Sarah? Anybody out there?
No one is raising their hand.
Okay, I think we have a resolution. Mary Ann?
In April 2020, Daniel and Christina Nemchek applied for site development plan approval to build an addition, a detached garage, patios, and related improvements to their house at 79 South Cottonette, which is located in the View Preservation District and is a contributing building in the Historic District. And whereas the improvements require a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals for AR, and whereas Han Engineering reviewed the plans and in memoranda dated March 31st, May 4th, and June 1st, listed a number of items, all of which were addressed in subsequent submissions. Whereas the planning board held a public hearing on May 6th, at which it advised applicants to move the proposed garage, which was done in a revised submission. And whereas the planning board continued the public hearing on June 1st, at which it advised applicants to reduce the paving in the proposed driveway and increase the planted area, which was done in a revised submission. Whereas the planning board continued the public hearing on July 1st, August 5th, and September 2nd. And whereas all comments of the village's landscape consultant were addressed to her satisfaction. Whereas the proposed improvements would not impact the view of the Hudson River from neighboring properties. And whereas the Architectural Review Board at its meeting of August 24th, 2020, granted demolition approval under section 224-199, and whereas a type 2 action under SECRA, now therefore be it resolved that the planning board grants the application for site development plan approval of the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled Nemchek Residence, subject to receiving a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals for FR.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Who seconds?
Second.
And second. All in favor? Let's do a roll call voice and authorization. Kevin?
Yes, and authorize Sarah.
Dan?
Yeah, yes to the motion and authorize Sarah to sign.
George?
Yes, and authorize Sarah to sign for me, please.
And Caesar is a yes, and authorize Sarah to sign. All set. Anything else, John?
Oh, that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Oh, wait, I forgot. Any comment from the public? I should have asked that before. Is there any public out there, Sarah?
No, no one's raising their hand.
Okay. At least we got that. record straight.
Caesar, do you have one
Who said
quick
what?
question if you're done with this?
Oh, you
That's
got
John
it.
speaking. I was just had one quick question, but it's not about, I'll let you finish. I'm sorry.
I think we're finished.
Okay, it just was about, we were on the ZBA docket for the last meeting, and I was going to ask Sarah if there's anything else we have to do to make sure that we're on the ZBA docket for the coming meeting on the 23rd.
Ed?
No, there's, oh, Ed, you're on mute.
Hey, John, give her a call in the morning. She's not in the office to check.
Okay, all right.
You meant give Sarah a call?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, John?
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you.
He's on next, also, Caesar.
Oh, okay. All right, so that was number 2. We're finished with number 2, 2020-12, and we're going to number 3, which is 2018-05, 26 Lewis Road, Emily and Benjamin Burley. Go ahead, John.
John Malone, Ferguson Malone Architecture, representing the Burleys. This is for a revision to an existing site plan. The item that was left based on the last meeting was related to the health of 2 trees. We had an arborist come and give us direction and updated the drawings to indicate the treatment that would be done to the 2 trees in question, and submitted that. I'm not sure. I don't think there's any other open items, but I'm willing to talk about whichever you want, put up anything that you guys need.
Did this say what the resolution of that arborist, so we have it in the record, what happened? Didn't they say?
So the 2 trees, there was 1 tree to the south of the building, and there really wasn't a significant amount of fill that was the result of the retaining wall changes. But what they had done during construction is they put like sort of 6 inches of topsoil all the way to the base of the trunk, and the grass is growing right to the base of the trunk, and he didn't like that condition, so the grass is going to be pulled away and there'll be a mulched area. There's a few reasons for that. I think string trimmers, the thing they use to cut grass near something, apparently can do a lot of damage to a tree, so he wants to have the base of that protected. And I think they said, just to confirm that there's no issues associated, the tree looks healthy, he doesn't think there's any issues, but they're going to do a water deep irrigation. It's like a water spade thing where they go down and they pump a lot of water in around the root system and make sure that everything is clear and there hasn't been any compaction. There's a similar, because of the location of the second tree, which is on the slope, and there's a similar condition where there was concern about the retaining wall. He looked at that. The retaining wall is sitting on top of the ground, and because the tree is coming down the slope, the root system of the tree is all compression roots on the downside, and there aren't really any tension roots, so he's not worried about any disruption. And there was similar recommendations about making sure to have a mulched collar around the base of the tree and do this air spading.
Okay.
I mean, this water.
All right, thank you very much. Any comment from the board, Kevin?
No.
Dan?
I'm good. Thank you.
George?
No, I'm fine.
Any public out there with a hand up, Sarah, or chat?
There is nobody raising their hand, and there is nothing in the chat.
Okay, I believe this, we have a resolution, Mary Ann.
Whereas on August 1st, I have another typo, 2018. Oh, no, this is right. Whereas on August 1st, 2018, Emily and Benjamin Burley received site development plan approval for an addition and related improvements to their house at 26 Lewis Road, which is included on the open space inventory map. And whereas in August 2020, applicants applied for revised site development plan approval for modifications to the plans, including removing a patio, reducing the size of a driveway and other hardscape changes, reducing the garage height, and modifications to the planting plan. And whereas Hunt Engineering reviewed the plans, and then a memorandum dated August 2nd stated that it found no engineering issues. And whereas Suzanne Nolan, the village's landscape consultant, made recommendations which were addressed to her satisfaction. Whereas the planning board held a public hearing on the application on August 5th and September 2nd. Whereas type 2 action under sequin therefore requires no environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board grants the application for site development plan approval of the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled Burley Residence prepared by Ferguson Malone Architecture, subject to submitting a letter from the certified arborist who performs the remediation work, verifying that the work was done in accordance with the recommendations of Malcolm Burney in his letter dated August 15th, 2020.
Okay, thank you. Can we get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
That was Dan, and we have a second.
Second.
All in favor, Kevin?
Yes, and authorize Sarah to sign.
Dan?
Yes, authorize Sarah to sign as well.
George?
Yes, Sarah, please sign.
Caesar? Yes, Sarah, please sign. Okay, anything else, John?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, going on. to number 4. Number 4 is 2020-22, 16 Hillside Terrace, Julia and Stephen Connor. We have someone, John, if you could, you're not on this, are you?
No,
John?
Sarah, can you kick me off so I can?
Michael Lewis, I think, isn't it?
All right, so John, if you can leave the meeting with electronically.
Okay.
All right, I see Mike Martorelli.
How's it going?
Good.
Yeah, Mike Martorelli representing Julia and Stephen Connor, the owners. So we received Hans' comments today, and there was only one significant comment about the area of disturbances not matching on the plans. The one on the bottom was a typo. So that should be it there.
Okay, and the proposal is to put a deck up.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody have any comment on this? Kevin, you're muted.
No, not at this time.
Dan,
No comment as well, Caesar. Looks okay to me.
George,
No comment.
anybody in the public wanting to comment? Sarah?
Nobody's raising their hand and there's nothing in the chat.
Okay. Mary Ann, you have a resolution ready?
Yeah. Whereas in August 2020, Julia and Stephen O'Connor applied for site development plan approval to construct a wooden deck and steps on their house at 16 Hillside Terrace. As Hunt Engineering reviewed the plans and in a memorandum dated September 1st wrote that all engineering issues were addressed satisfactorily, but the drawings needed minor corrections. And whereas Suzanne Nolan, the village's landscape architect, reviewed the plans and had no recommendations, the planning board held a public hearing on the application on September 2nd, 2020, whereas it's a type 2 action under SEQR and therefore requires no environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board grants the application for site development plan approval of the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled Modifications to 16 Hillside Terrace, subject to complying with the items in the Han memorandum dated September 1st, 2020.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the resolution.
Motion.
Dan?
Motion to accept resolution.
George, anybody second?
Second.
That was Sarah, that was George.
Beat me.
It was a tie between Kevin and George, but we'll go with George for the record. All in favor? Kevin?
Yes, and please authorize Sarah to sign, please.
Dan?
Accept the resolution and authorize Sarah to sign for us. Me.
George?
Yes, and authorize Sarah, please.
Caesar is a yes, and authorizing Sarah to proceed. Okay, that was easy for you, right?
Yeah, thanks everyone. Have a good one.
You got any questions? Nope. Okay. Leave the meeting electronically, please.
Thanks.
All right, we're going to number 5, 2020-20. 9 Stearns Ridge, Brian and Megan Kimber.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you, but I'm not sure I'm seeing you. Let's see if you're here somewhere.
Are you seeing the screen?
I see the screen and I see you in profile, but not you. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. There's no little button on here for the.
All right, we see the screen,
I heard
the
it.
elevation here.
There. Okay.
Oh, we see you now.
And there should be 2 of us on. I'm here with Laura Wakefield, who's the architect on the project. I also believe somebody is here from Hudson Engineering, and I believe Susan Janchill is here. She's the landscape architect. If they're not, then I'll talk to them tomorrow. So we heard a lot of what you said at the last meeting, and we understand that there are great concerns about the height. I don't know that we really had a lot of other questions about that, other than I know that there's a general concern here with stormwater because we are sloping down to the properties below. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, since the height is the main concern, why don't we, before we waste time on anything else, let me go through some correspondence we have here. We have a letter dated August 29th, 2020 from Gershkovich, and the first letter from the same Gershkovich of 7/28/20. Both letters were very concerned, and the second letter addresses the modifications that may or may not have been made, with it still objecting to the height. And it went through some technical information. There is an email from another neighbor. Oh, by the way, this is 11 Stearns Ridge is Gershkovich. We have a neighbor at 7 Stearns Ridge from Benays, and they had an initial letter objecting to the height, and a second letter saying their concerns about the excessive windows and glare have largely been satisfied. We also have a letter from Tishelman, Rory Tishelman, dated 8/31/2020, saying they think the design is acceptable. I didn't give you the dates for the Bernays letters. One was July 27th, and the one saying everything was addressed was August 25th. And there's a letter from Lori and Jim Davodowitz, dated August 25th, saying they were in favor of the way the house looks. Now, Patty, the last meeting, if I memory, I was pretty definitive about my concern with the height. I believe George was too, and the other two members have had some time to think about it. George, where do you, first of all, did you do anything about the height?
Yeah, we've made a number of changes. Maybe if I
Well,
can.
did you make it shorter? Let's get to the chase. Did you make it shorter?
I'll try, but there's some.
No. Did you make it shorter? Yes or no?
Yeah, we did. I thought you were
how much?
My presentation shorter. I'm sorry. The house has been lowered down. We cut the pitch on it. We lowered the first floor down. We reduced height from the second floor. So we got it down, but we're pretty much down to where we can go. We still need a variance. But if I can kind of walk you through that, I think it might help.
Well, let's cut to the chase here and say some of our staff looked at it and said you're still 13 feet over the allowable, or 8 feet, depending on whether you can justify the 5-foot bonus.
Right.
So at a minimum, you're 8 feet over, and at a maximum, if you can't justify the bonus, you're 13 feet over. Let's leave it at that for a moment. Let me get some of the other board input. Kevin, what do you think of that? Now, remember, this is a brand new house. It's not like a modification or an old house that was built under some old code. It's a brand new house coming in on the existing code. Kevin?
I mean, I guess that does sort of hint at the concern is, so if it's a brand new house, maybe Patty, if you could just sort of explain why it's necessary why a house can't be built within the envelope. Just sort of recap that briefly.
Before Patty explained that, let's get Dan's input.
One of the residents indicated that they were happy with the tree plantings taking care of the height of the exposure of the house, but again, it doesn't really address the height issue. And as with Kevin, what exactly did you do? And
let me reorganize the order of what I'm doing things.
So let me finish the canvassing of the board. George?
I think my comments from last time still stand. That I think this is clearly none of the other properties, correct me if I'm wrong, required a variance. This one is asking for one. And typically with a variance, it's for a hardship. The hardship here is that this property isn't the same as the others. So it is sort of like, this is what this land is and was, and should have been documented or presented to the client about the restrictions. Instead, what I kind of gather from this, and I'm just gathering it, is that in essence, they're trying to say everything else is the same. So why can't we keep it to this increased height? And I still stand by, it is absolutely counter to what all those folks before us did in terms of coming up with this. I specifically think that they did come up with the height restrictions specifically for things like this. Now, I will also say, if this was a rear yard that was not visible from any other, let's say, public spaces, I'd probably not be as inclined to be so adamant about it. But this is both affecting the people on Riverview Road and as you go up into the school. And it makes a very strong statement, which I think is opposite to what the village intended. So that's how I stand.
Well, I think that's helpful because I think what we can do.
1 second, I didn't finish what I stand. And while not in the same words, the substantive, I substantively agree with George that I just don't see this. And if you recall my exact words at the last meeting, you need to fix this because this could be a deal breaker. Okay, Patty, you're on.
Okay, thank you. I've skipped to a page which I think is pertinent, which is the survey of the property. We're showing a couple of things on this. The first is that, as this arrow shows, which is 100 foot long, we are dropping 28% in the area that we can build in based on where the limits of the building envelope, which is constricted on this site effectively by this line, where that can fit. So we're going to provide, I've got Hudson is going to do the steep slopes analysis so you can see that, but there is nothing on this site that is not steep slopes. I also want to call your attention on this drawing to this part right here where the retaining wall on the Beneas property is located, and the retaining wall here where the retaining wall on 11 Stearns is located. It's not that these are kind of some random thing and doesn't really factor into what we're doing. These were the walls that were built, or the one on Bard's property is part of a series of walls built on 3, 5, and 7 Stearns, and it's actually shown on the original limited site plan approval map that was approved by the planning board, which I think has, as we're talking about the people who came before and what their thinking is, I think that matters. In terms of how the height on this building works, now this is the adjusted, we've dropped a couple of feet in this. From the circle, the ridge of the house is 26.55 feet. We're sloping down at the driveway pitch that we can, that's a 10% pitch, which is often considered a good limit to that, particularly when you're driving down towards a building. And from that level, the grade that's in front, the parking area, so to speak, we're at 28.7 feet to the ridge of the house. We've also kept the massing of it such that we bring the roofing down. We've got steps in how the eaves work on the building, down to where we have about a third of the building is 1 story, and it's measured 10.9 feet above that parking area, which really means that it's about 8 feet above that eave is about 8 feet above the street. So, and that's a third of the house, and that's the side of the house that is closest to the person that is most concerned as a neighbor about the height. Our problem, as you can see on the other side of this drawing, is how the site slopes down. There were comments at the last meeting in the chat that addressed this idea that we were somehow blasting out rock and removing things so we could have a walkout basement. That's not the case. The back of this house is effectively 8 feet above grade. So at the basement level. So what we're
Patty,
doing,
I apologize for interrupting, but these are all valid reasons of why you did what you did, with the exception of dealing with the height restrictions. So all the things that you're saying, fine, that is how you were proposing to design this without regard to the height restrictions. So one could easily, if one said to themselves that they had to follow those restrictions, a house could be built. But you were given a site that had these restraints, okay? And instead of working with them, those restraints, you elected to say, no, we're not going to follow them. We're going to do what we want to do on this, and we're going to try to show it this way. Is that incorrect?
that is not correct.
Okay.
You know,
And I don't understand what you're doing.
Okay, well, if I can get
By the way, Patty, that was well said. I says, I don't know where you're going with this, but it has nothing to do with why it's 13 feet over.
I believe if I can get to the point of making
It's not going to make it any shorter.
No, but I think if I'm understanding what George is saying, and I believe that I do, if this was a site that just happened to be like this and hadn't been the result of a limited site plan that we had gotten approved with specific conditions on this site, with retaining walls to lift the elevation of this grade up, shown on that limited site plan, then I would agree with you. We'd be trying to do something different, but we didn't go into this blind. We accepted that the limited site plan has meaning. That was done by your predecessors as the planning board. If I can show that drawing, which follows from this, I think you'll understand. You might still
Patty, I'll agree with what you're saying, but they gave you a limited site approval, right, for this. But that didn't say you could build as high as you want.
No, it didn't.
It didn't. So here's where you can't take a part and ignore the other part. It's a holistic approach. And the thing that you have to remember is that no other property up here, correct me if I'm wrong, has required or requested a variance for a new structure.
They didn't need to request it because the wall that we're proposing on this property was built on their properties, raising their grade up so that it was no longer in the hole. They were all at this same slope. There's a 10-foot retaining wall that was built behind 3, 5, and 7 Stearns, raising the yard of their property. Lots 5 and 6 did not have that retaining wall built at the time that we did the road. When we built the road and regraded these areas, we just didn't, these were properties that were being bought by other people. So we didn't build the retaining walls for them, but the retaining walls were integral to the design that was approved by the limited site plan by the planning board. It's shown on that.
Okay, so now I understand a little bit better that what you're saying is that in essence, when you got your limited site approval on these other various lots, you prepared those lots for this condition. You got approval and then you built what you built. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And this lot, you didn't do that.
We didn't continue.
Were you the developer of this?
Yes.
Okay, so that means this lot was left and it was ignored at that time. So now it's becoming an issue, okay, in terms of what it is. If this walls were done like you did on the other ones, then I don't think there would be an issue because it's a pre-existing condition. So now what you're asking for is to take that pre-existing condition and do it now. Is that correct?
Well, what I'm saying is that the limited site plan has not been completed in the same way that the final coat of paving has never been installed in the street. This one lot did not get the retaining wall built on it. Lot 11 Stearns also did not have that wall built at that time. But several years ago, when they built that house, that wall was then built and the whole back of their property was raised up.
And was there a limited site plan that showed a retaining wall that's on here?
Yes. And if I can move on, I can get to that.
Feel
So
free.
basically what I'm showing is where that retaining wall is. Now I understand the village has reduced the heights. So we've worked with a 6-foot retaining wall in the back. The other retaining walls are range from 6 to 10 feet. If our wall was 8 feet, the height of this house measured in the back would be 39.5 feet. Okay, let me move to the say. Okay, so here's the limited site plan that was approved in April 22nd, 2002. I'm blowing in now, kind of getting into the corner. As I come along here, you see the detention basin down here. This is 3 sterns, 5 sterns, 7 sterns, Barbanas's house. Here's the subject property. Here's 11 sterns. So I've blown this up again so you can see the actual footprint of that lot. And here I have blown it up a little bit more. There is a retaining wall shown on the limited site plan right here, with the top of that retaining wall labeled as 375. So if this wall is built and this yard is raised up, and that's considered part of the preparation of this whole site, this whole subdivision, because this was a very complex project to do that involved a tremendous amount of cut and fill. And it resulted in a lot of stone walls being built. You can see here's 11 sterns. You see the stone wall that was laid out behind them. So what we have proposed is building the same stone wall so we get that same condition, so that this lot, 9 sterns, is not different than its neighbors. They all were meant to be up at a certain height. They all were meant to relate to the street. Here's the site plan that we currently have superimposed on that. If I toggle back and forth, you can see that retaining wall basically in about the same location as what we've shown.
Patty, if you don't mind me asking this kind of dumb question, why are you going for variance?
I was told we needed to.
If you're saying that this retaining wall at that height is approved, okay?
Yeah.
That's what I understand. Then I'm confused then. I need assistance in understanding this from either Ed or Mary Ann.
Yeah, I think it would be good to get that resolved, because when the statement you made earlier about us how we went into this lot, we didn't go into this lot blindly, just hoping we could do whatever we want. We went into this lot with the understanding that there were very specific requirements for building on this lot that we were going to comply with. We also were very aware of a fairly strong, when we first started building the houses up here, there was no HOA, and Bard's house was the first built. Then we did 2 spec houses. Then we started filling in. We're now at a point where in a hopefully short period of time, all of these lots will be developed, and we now have a very active HOA.
But let's just go back to if Ed or Mary Ann is there, I would appreciate if they would kind of comment about this, because what I hear from Patty now is that in essence, I don't understand why you're going for this variance, is if you have, as of right now, these retaining walls and those heights as established by this diagram that you're showing, does your height restriction, or can you then comply with the code?
Yes.
Yeah, well, what happened, I mean, and Ed can kick in about the limited site development, but I just checked the code, and the definition of height was changed in 2003, how height is measured.
And that was after the
After
site.
this.
It was after this, that's correct.
After this, so that's why it would have met the definition, it would have met the height back then, but it doesn't now. And you have to comply in any application. You have to comply with the law that's in effect. George.
Right. So what you're saying basically is that he can build these walls, but even doing that, he still is 8 feet or 13 feet over. Is that correct?
Well, the limitation on the house height still still is warranted by the village zoning code. The height of the walls, some of these walls are put in, some of these walls are not put in. This was to demonstrate they could build the houses. It's not a promise or a guarantee they can build these
Right.
walls.
Okay, so what you're saying too, I now understand better too, is that in essence, it really doesn't matter if this retaining wall is built or not. It's still the contours of that slope of that property that dictate the height restriction. Is that correct?
The zoning code is the driven factor, but he's not wrong in saying the walls were needed to build the house. The problem is the zoning code changed for height after limited site development plan approval was approved.
Right, but
so this house, I didn't look at it in the context of the old code. He would have to better demonstrate that.
I'm not making that argument at all, Ed. We've complied with the 2003 height restriction with all of the lots that we've participated in, including what we've proposed on this lot. So
you're not, Patty, because you haven't. The 2003 forward height code requires it going to the lowest of the lowest of the two grades existing or proposed.
That's correct.
And prior to 2003, that wasn't there, and it was the average roof height.
Right. So if this wall is permitted to be built as part of the site development, preparing the lot, and we establish the grade of that wall at what it's shown, we are at that point 39.5 from the lowest point of grade to the height of our ridge, and our measure to the grade plane is less than 35 feet. And the only thing that we need to, as I understood it, document for your office is we have not yet submitted the steep slopes analysis.
Correct.
But I think.
Well, hold on. You can't take one or a little of one and a little of the other.
Of course not.
If you're saying, even at 40 feet, you're still 8 feet too high, correct?
No, if we're
to the code today.
In the code today, if we don't exceed 40 feet, we're okay. From the lowest point of grade to the highest point of grade.
And what is your height?
If we build the wall, it would be at.
No. What is your height from the lowest grade of the periphery?
Right now on the site, we're at 48 point something.
Right.
Okay, so you're 8 feet above the allowable height in the post 2003 code. Now, it's two different arguments. That's one answer, because you can't take the wall, include the wall, and use the new height. You can possibly make an argument that it met the old code and the old height, but you have to demonstrate that.
We've never asked for that on any of the other houses.
No. What you're trying to do is you're trying to take the best of both.
No, I'm not.
You're trying to take zero. You're trying to take the top of the wall as 0, and then you want 40 feet from there. That you can't do that. This argument's for the ZBA anyway, but you can't, in good faith, do both. But I could see an argument at the ZBA, not at this board, to prove if you can provide evidence that it meets the code prior to 2003, because we know that the limited site development plan approval would approve that.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm not confident of sending an 8-foot variance on a new house to the ZBA, or 13 feet, if the 5-foot bonus is not justified.
I don't think there's anyone who looks at the site, Ed, correct me if you see it differently, but when we're showing a 28% slope across the flattest portion of the site in the building, in the footprint of the building, I think it's clear that we're over 15%.
Yeah, I refrain from assumptions.
Yeah,
That's just gets me in trouble.
That's why I said we need that. We need that before we can make that statement. But if you look at the drawing that I've put up, I understand that, George, you're not supporting the idea that if we fit in with our neighbors, that we're then doing a contextually responsive house. But I don't see why that's not what our goal should be. This elevation here is the street elevation. We're the lowest house of this strip. So Bard's house, which is, is a little bit higher than where we're setting. We're lower than his.
Patty, if you don't mind, I understand what you're trying to say. And again, you're sort of saying half of the story, because the other story is the visual impact from the rear is far more substantial than the others. And the other thing that I keep on going back to is that none of the other properties that you presented, I think most of them, frankly, ever required a variance.
Only because we raised the site. In other words, all of these houses would be, the house at 11 is right now at 41.5. So, these houses all, if you go to the original grade before the wall was built, which of course 11 did not have the wall built before it went for approvals, those houses all would have required variances. This height, we build a retaining wall at the top of the conservation easement that goes basically from 9 Stearns all the way down to the property where the detention basin is. That wall raised all of those yards up. I mean, it made sense because—
I'm sorry, Patty, let me cut you off here for a second. You're going to have to come back for other reasons, and obviously you and Ed have a disagreement on interpretation of toes and heights, and justification for the 5-foot bonus. Why don't you arrange to meet with Ed and Doug, or just Ed, and get that squared away so that we don't have a lengthy, and I don't think it even ended tonight yet, about interpretation of height, which remains unclear. So you need to get that straight. Right now, it's either 8 or 13 feet over, and you're disputing that because of interpretation of the toe and the wall and when it was approved. So why don't you come back and work on that? Either work on it and get a—
We'll definitely address that. There are two other things.
Let me finish. And either shorten the house or talk about how that 13 feet is not 13 feet by doing whatever you're going to do.
Right.
Because you got a drainage problem that you have to fix. We're awaiting the arborist report. And you didn't, I don't know if you did tonight, but you didn't present, or you need to present the view from Riverview.
I do have.
I don't, we'll take a look at that if you have it. But the arborist report is important as to what's being removed and what's being put back in. A species for species kind of arborist report.
Right. You do have that, and I think
you did change the retaining walls in the back. It appears that they're a little different than the last.
We eliminated one of the long retaining wall that was down below. We reshaped it so we could take that out. What I tried to do, I'll be very candid with it. I went back, me showing 2 retaining walls, I figured that would be a very easy thing to hit at, because the site plan that got limited site plan approval did not show 2, it showed 1. So, we redesigned it so that we could do it with the 1 retaining wall located in approximately the same placement as the one that's on the limited site plan.
What's the height of that wall?
We've only shown that wall at 6 feet. We would like to build that wall at 8 feet, at which point everything, is very, we fit in with the neighbors and everything works well. There are 2 other things, if I can. I know I won't go back into any of that other stuff, but there are 2 things that we did that I wouldn't want to appear at your next meeting and have not gotten some sense of what your feeling is on it. What I'm showing right now is the landscaping plan. The trees along this side are the trees that Mr. Benes was talking about. These 2 in particular, we've agreed that we're planting those as soon as we've stabilized the site. In other words, once the foundation's in, we're planting those. So this will all be screened even during construction. The neighbor to the east at 11 Stearns has, I believe, a legitimate concern with our plan to plant 5 trees in this back area. I think we can show with the density of the foliage and just the forest, not leaves on the trees, just how dense this conservation easement is, which is very deep compared to everywhere else on the site. There really is not a view of this site from down below. When you're in that area, you can't see the houses on the ridge when you're in it. So what we're wondering is if it would make sense, since there is a need for additional trees, for the HOA to give a better streetscape and to provide better screening at the entrance, we'd be willing to take the trees that are hard to fit on the site and locate those down so that it does good for the whole community. And that way, these 5 trees would not be blocking the views from 11 Stearns. I do, I haven't gotten anything in writing from the owner of 11 Stearns pertaining to that, but I've been told that that's one of the concerns that he had, that we're showing trees that will block his view. And I don't think.
Well, the thing we have for 11 Stearns is that they're opposed to this project. So obviously you need to do some work. When you're saying putting trees, part of the arborist report has to identify what species you're putting in.
All that's all been included. That was included at the last meeting too. We've got all the species, the size of planting, the size of the trees.
Comment from our landscape arborist is that we're awaiting an arborist report.
I believe that's not on this issue. I believe that is on way back here someplace.
Well, it should be for the whole property, not just a corner of the property.
No, I agree. But here's what we did. We had Care for Trees out to the site. Tom Serpe walked the site. He assessed the trees. This has not been submitted yet, so I wasn't going into any detail on it.
Okay, right,
but
fine.
We'll provide that, and that should address those issues and satisfy that.
Okay. And the drainage?
Drainage, Hudson, we got Doug's comments today. I don't disagree with those at all. One of the concerns that we have here is we understand that some of the water that's coming off of other lots is affecting. I don't think any of the ones that we did down here, but some of these others might have water that's coming down to affect Riverview Road. So I've asked Michael Stein, who I think is very talented with these things, that we need to do whatever is possible to make sure we don't have any kind of problems like that. So,
Patty, you got a lot of rock on the site too. I mean, your test pits, you're showing infiltrators below rock. So I think it's going to be,
that doesn't work.
Could be tough. Yeah.
So if I may, the Coltex are actually above. The issue is that it's located in fill. And typically you wouldn't be allowed to put Coltex in fill. But on a site like this, the only alternative is to do an attenuation gallery that goes into a level spreader, which is slowly releasing the water over land in the backyard. So it'd be a reduced runoff compared to what's happening on the site now, but it's still releasing it compared to infiltration in which the water is going underground.
You're releasing it on a steep hill that runs down to Riverview, which I think the address down here is 66 Riverview.
Yeah, we do, again, in the current.
You're gonna make that,
design,
you're gonna make that backyard a swimming pool? I mean.
No, again, it's a reduction. So whatever's happening on the site, we have to make sure whatever runoff rate is happening now, it's less than that. The current design is
Who is
Coltex.
speaking right now?
Sorry, Albeda from Hudson Engineering.
Okay. Well, you'll have to satisfy that with.
That's fine.
And the volume as well.
That's another topic that you should straighten out before the next meeting.
Right. I think, Ubeda, you're going to have a lot of great conversations with Doug. Doug's going to have a lot of fun with it. So hopefully you will come up with a really great solution.
I can see something that works.
It would be good, right?
And the last thing is, did you have anything on the view from Riverview? Specifically, I think the address that's right behind here is 66. I could be wrong.
Right. I'll go to that in just a sec. I just wanted to show one other thing that we changed because I'm right on that page now. This is the plan that we had.
Oh, the driveway. The driveway we said was too big.
Right. So what we did is we rotated the house more. That shortened that up, reduced the amount of area of the driveway, moved it further away from 7 Stearns. And this rotation brings the garage back about 9 feet from where it was before. So this is actually back even closer to being even with the front of the 11 Stearns house. So I think this does a lot of effort towards what that goal was. And it also puts us, it sits in well on the property with the way it sits. But let me go back all the way to back where we walked through the woods. So what we did, the first thing I did, and maybe I'll take the pictures anyway, because, you know, it probably would be good for you to be able to see them. It's hard to move this thing fast now. So what we did is I first went down to Riverview Road and trying to take pictures from the properties on Riverview Road of this. You see absolutely nothing. I mean, you literally can't see the site from there because of the density. So what I did instead is I walked in onto the backyard, you know, the back property line of their properties, and I photographed kind of, you know, 4 shots. So I'm doing 180 degrees from left to right.
Where are you standing right now?
Right now, I'm standing at the bottom northwest corner of 9 Stearns, which is right about, it's probably the corner of the property you're referring to. So we're down at the bottom of this.
So you're in the backyard of which address on Riverview?
I'd have to look at, I don't know the addresses well enough. It's, it used to be Dr. Felix's house.
I don't know that.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
So what we did is I walked through the woods and I took the photos, and this is this one down here where I'm looking up the site. This is the edge of the conservation easement, and we're another, 20 feet back from that, over the top of it. So, from the property itself, you'll have a tough time seeing the house. So what we did is we walked down along the properties. At this point, I'm standing on the property line. I've got the high school behind me. And the way this works actually is the shape of the property is such that when you get to that northwest corner, if you walk further to the east at that point, you're actually more behind 11 Stearns than you are 9 Stearns, but it's very difficult to see anything. So at this point, I'm walking to the south. I'm standing with my back to the high school. And if you look up here, this is the corner of that retaining wall that separates between 9 and 7 Stearns at Barb Benares' house. Here you can see it again. So you're looking up the hill, you're seeing the house through the woods there, but you can tell it's more than it's not just the leaves that are blocking it. This is relatively dense forest. At this point, we're behind Amy Ziff's house. You can see the house up on the other side of that. Again, this is a lot of planting, and in the wintertime, you do see this 5 Stearns and the 3 Stearns house, Davidowitz, because those are the 2 that have the thinnest easement. As you get to Bard's house, you really don't see that well. And as you turn the corner, 9 Stearns is a much deeper section of conservation easement. You can see that on the plans. And then we've come down here. We're looking up at this point to the Davidowitz house. And as I look to this shot here, this is where I'm looking down. This is where that detention basin is. And we're heading down to the driveway, the Pond Lane that goes back. I think that all I have here is shots that were showing how that the retaining walls on the 2 adjacent properties, that's what I was referring to. This is raising the grades of those properties. And these are 3 in the backs. These are all 3-story walkouts. So if you go to what the grade originally was here, to where those houses were, every one of those houses would have required a variance. And I don't know that they would have been more than ours, but they certainly would have been the same ballpark.
But they do have that wall.
They do, which is, I'm not going to say it in a public forum like this of why the wall was not built on this property, but it was a personal thing between people. It wasn't, the village of Irvington didn't say, we don't want you to build the wall. No one said, we don't want you to build the wall. It was at that point owned by someone, and he didn't know what he wanted to do, and he was being asked to pay for it. I already said I wasn't going to go into it, so I won't go any further. So,
if you don't mind me acting dumb here, the wall doesn't really matter with today's code regarding height. It has to do with the contours of the site, regardless if you have a wall or not, to figure out where the height of that is to code or not to code. And what I hear you saying is that perhaps that was overlooked on these other properties, because if you were to do it today, if, for instance, the one that's, I guess it's 9 sterns. That I'm
No,
looking at.
we're 9. I think you're thinking 11.
Seven.
That's
Okay.
okay.
If 7 wasn't built and that retaining wall was there, and you were here coming to this board today, we would have the same issue. Is that correct?
If the interpretation was that the wall and the fill behind the wall did not change the grade, they would definitely then have to go for the exact same variance that we're being told we have to go for.
Right. Okay. That is
but I think the one thing I want to make sure there's not confusion on is that none of these houses were built before they changed the code. All of these houses were built after the code was changed. We actually were one of the first houses that came in after the code. In fact, I'm not going to take credit for it because I don't think people looked at it as an accomplishment that was what they wanted, but it was a reasonable thing to work out. We showed on lot 15 a house that looked good. It was hunkered down, and the code they had at that point limited the height to 35 feet, and there were no provisions for what happened when you were on a steep slope. So what we did is we said, okay, we'll remove the roof. So we came in at the next meeting, showed the exact same house with it was just a flat roof. And they didn't, no one liked that. We didn't think it was good, but we showed that's what would comply. Obviously we would probably be able to make this house comply if we did a flat roof, but I don't know that we then get the support of the HOA. We've got like 8 feet is in the roof itself. So if we just had a flat roof on the house, we'd probably be okay with that, except it wouldn't be fair to the people who have bought houses trusting that the guidelines for the house designs in Dearman Park were going to follow certain rules. So, we're trying to work with everyone's rules, and we're trying to be consistent.
But Patty, but here's the thing, Patty, regardless of what happened before, it's what's happening now. And this has been alerted as an issue. And so just by saying, oh, it's because of this, it's because these are laws. These are pieces of paper that have specific meaning. And one has to follow those unless there is a hardship of sorts. And then that's something you have to fight with at the zoning board.
Yeah.
But here, if you're asking a planning board to just say, oh, just because they were done this way before, it's okay to do it now. What's the point of planning?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying this.
You were saying that the HOA has to approve this and stuff like that.
No,
it isn't that way. It's not. I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying I'm trying to be fair to everyone who's affected by this.
I think we're going to put this off because we can go on all night discussing the height. And I think we're finished with everything. I think you're going to come back. You're either going to make the house shorter, or you can convince Ed that his calculations are incorrect and it's not 13 feet over the limit.
I would never be trying to convince Ed that he is incorrect. I'm going to try and convince Ed that the fact that this had limited site plan approval has some bearing in this matter, but then
you get back to what George just said. What was then is then, and what is now is now.
Okay, let me have 1 minute, which is just let me say what would happen at this point in time if the road had not been finished. If, let's say, the road ended.
I'm going to play around with hypotheticals.
It's not finished.
I know it's not, but I'm not going there. I'm saying if we were in a subdivision and the road had never been completed to reach a property, the planning board wouldn't tell us you can't build on the lot because the road doesn't get there. They'd say you have to build the road. You have to extend the road to have.
Patty,
yeah.
But I'll see it.
Go ahead.
A lot of this conversation you're having is for the zoning board, not for the planning board, although it's good backup.
Good practice.
That's what I mean.
So I think the board understands where you're coming from. I think you and I have to sit down and have a discussion over what could have been, what should have been. I think my comment stands that if you show it complies with the old code, you might have a chance to discuss it. With
Yeah.
the ZBA.
All right, let me,
But that's it. Oh, and just one more thing. The 5 foot is called the Westwood exception to go from 35 to 40 in the code.
Yeah.
and you have to justify that, because I don't
Right.
think it's
Yeah.
justified.
We agree. That was the first comment in Doug's memo, and I agree totally. And I emailed Hudson that we need them to do that right away.
All right, we covered a lot of ground. I'm going to go canvass the board for additional comments, because we covered other things other than the height since the first canvass. Dan?
The height, again, the proposed rear height is 49 feet and the neighbor next door is at 41 feet. So, I mean, that's like a good difference, like 17%. So again, I guess it is a height issue, as George says, with a holistic approach with the whole community. Is this the last lot to be developed in that?
This is the last lot on Stearns Ridge.
Okay.
If you go to Dearman Close, there's, I think, 3 lots left.
Okay.
I think it's 7, 8, and 12.
Okay.
All right, Dan?
Yeah, I'm good after that point. Thank you.
Kevin?
No, I think we've covered quite a bit already. So yeah, I don't have anything to add.
George, anything? I know your feelings on height. We covered some other things other than height. Any comment?
Yeah, no, I think that I think if Patty had brought up these arguments that he's bringing up now, the questions wouldn't have been as harsh. So I think that he has to convince at least me that this makes sense from a, not necessarily specifically for this property, as much as that there's reasons why that this should happen. And currently, no, I'm too confused now about how this is working. So I need someone to work it out themselves and then explain it in sort of layman's terms so that I can understand. But I don't agree with the idea, again, in principle, of a new building requiring a variance unless there's a reason. Okay, and the reason could be certain different things. But I don't see the reason yet. And so, Patty, do me a favor and convince me.
Yep.
Well, not now. You're gonna
don't worry, Caesar. I think I'm near the end on another matter, so I don't want to keep talking now. Anyway.
I will agree that you're going to come back after you talk to Ed, and then Ed perhaps will have layman's language for George and I and the rest of the board. Right now, it's a lot of a variance, 13 feet, and you really didn't do anything since the last meeting when we clearly said it's a deal breaker. So you work it out with Ed if you can, and let me pause for a minute and ask if there's anybody listening who has a comment. Judging from the correspondence, there likely is.
There was a couple in the chat.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sarah, go ahead.
There's 2 people raising their hand, and there's several comments in the chat. One person that made comments in the chat is also raising their hand, so I can let them speak.
Let them go first.
Okay. That'd be Amy Ziff.
Hi, my name is Amy Ziff. I am owner at Dearman Close, Dearman Park. I live at 5 Stearns Ridge. You saw the back of my house as Patty showed some of the pictures. I happen to be the president of the HOA here, although I'm not at this meeting in any sort of official capacity whatsoever. I'm here simply as a neighbor. I've lived in Irvington now for over 6 years, and next to the Boonets was one of the original core, homeowners up here settling before many of the houses were built, and we've been waiting what feels like a really long time for houses to be built. And I cannot tell you how excited we are to have the Kimbers taking on the project at 9 Stearns. It is, it's a project. I don't have to tell you guys that. It's hard to build in Irvington. Nobody would do it if they understood how hard it was. That concerns me, frankly, as a person who pays a substantial amount of taxes, especially up here in these new homes. And I'm dismayed about this meeting, frankly, and the tone of what is happening up here. We've always known that these homes were going to be developed. We need to allow them to be developed. But not only that, they need to be developed in a manner that is consistent with all of the other homes. And I'm no architect, and I don't know all of the professional language that you guys use, but it speaks to me when I look at the level of the roof lines to see that the Kimbers home is shorter than the rest. If you reduce that by this proposed 13 feet or so, that to meet some quote code of the town, I think the house would look absurd. And I am very concerned over adherence to the letter of the law and not taking into consideration the context of the homes up here. They are large homes. I understand that Irvington may not like that. The Kimbers is much smaller than most of the rest of these homes up here in its actual footprint. They are building a house with a lot that drops down substantially, but is fortunately blocked between it and the neighboring school and Riverview by this lovely forest. Patty has shown the capacity to build really elegant homes that blend into nature, that are thoughtful of the neighbors. And I am in favor of the house as it is drawn. And I would like to urge you to really think about, come take a walk up here, look at what you are asking this home to do, and think about it in its context, not to the letter of the law of the code. I understand that that is important and we should be adhering to that, but also taking into consideration, again, that context and what it feels like to live up here and what it will look like to complete our cul-de-sac and to finish that build and to be able to move on. So I really appreciate all the time that each of you spends on this. I cannot imagine how many impassioned people you see thinking about their homes, and each one, is different and wants a different consideration. But I just wanted to express how it is to be, living up here while these things are being developed, and to think about it in relation to that. This is a home we want built. I want to see built. My family wants to see built. And so I just wanted to express that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Please leave the meeting electronically. So I think our gatekeeper has spotted some other people who want to comment.
Yes, the next person that's raising their hand is Alan Gershkovich.
Okay, can the board hear me?
Yes, we can. Or at
Good,
least
I appreciate, I appreciate everyone's time. I'm at 11 Stearns Ridge, so I'm the direct neighbor to the house. And again, we also welcome the Kimbers. I think it is important to consider, despite all emotion, that a conforming house can be built. That's a fact, right? That's just a reality on that site. It wouldn't have been sold unless a conforming house could be built. We want the Kimbers here. When you move the house up by 10 feet to the road, you don't have a roof problem. And the bottom line is the height is the height is the height. We mentioned it last time. And that's just the reality of it. So we want them to be built. They can be built, but I also want the board to follow its rules. Also, 11 Stearns Ridge is a conforming house. Okay, so is 7, so is 5, and the houses before. The request here, I think the word was very well used, was the holistic approach. Don't just choose the pieces you want and then throw off the pieces you don't like. So I welcome that Ed is going to meet with Patty and go through that. But frankly, 95% of this meeting could have been avoided when we discussed the direct and actual issue. I will reserve my discussion about the trees because frankly, I didn't appreciate the previous conversations, which are, hey, we're going to just put the trees in your view and block your view, and we hope you object to the board. I'm going to reserve that until later. Okay? So I've said what I've said, and you've received my letter.
Is you completed there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was very, you made some pointed comment. I appreciate it. Thank you. If you could.
Yep.
I think you may want to listen to the rest of the meeting, so don't drop out of the meeting. But Sarah, how do you do that so we can still stay on? And
I can just disable the talking. I didn't promote them as panelists.
Okay. You said there's others that want to speak?
No one's raising their hand, but there's several comments in the chat. several,
Do you read that, or how does that work?
I can read them if you like. I believe you guys can all see them, but if you would like me to read some of them, I can.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Well, there are several comments from Lori Davidowitz. I mean, I don't know if she's here. I don't know if she wants to speak. But
If Davidovich is listening, rather than read your chat, if you would rather speak, that would be simpler.
yeah, if you would like to raise your hand. Well, her comment was, as neighbors, we don't want a house that looks like it's down a hole. That is very unappealing. Of the final height of the house is the same as the neighbors. We believe that will look best. And are you sure the as-built surveys of the neighboring homes are exactly the height that they were approved at? Her second comment during the discussion, the back of the house is very, quote, handsome and will actually not be as visible as you are imagining. Oh, she actually just made a comment that she can't speak. She's in a public setting and she has her phone on mute. So that's why I'm going to read the comments.
Okay.
Makes sense.
The other comments, I received two from Ben Glazer. They agree with what Amy Ziff mentioned. The house would look off if it was 13 feet lower. And they are a homeowner on Dearman and they very much welcome the home. And we also received a comment from Natasha Corio, and they are in favor of the home as drawn. And they agree with Amy Ziff's comments.
Okay. That's it?
That's it.
Okay, Patty, are you still around?
I'm still here.
There was one comment that I think from the comments that if we drop it 13 feet, it will look lower than the other houses. But then there was a fellow who commented that would be fixed if you move the house up closer to the road, and then the roof lines would match, and you wouldn't have the height problem. Or maybe you wouldn't. Or maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you wouldn't have the height problem if you moved the house up and the roof lines were equal. Those are things you can talk to Ed about.
Yeah.
And if you move it up too close, I think a front yard variance is more easily obtained than a 13-foot height of variance.
Let's talk 8, not 13. So, yeah, that's the first hurdle I got to clear. But I think we'll be 8, not 13.
Yeah, well, either dead a little bit or dead a lot. 8 foot is still big.
13, I'm a lot more dead than 8.
All right. Any other comment from the board? I'm not going to canvas, just blur it out. Okay, I think we're done. You got your homework.
Yeah.
You either got to make it shorter, move it to the front, or convince Ed that you're correct about some of these things that we talked are not pertinent. I'm not sure how you make a house shorter other than moving it forward like one the gentleman mentioned. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Could sign off.
I did.
Next is 2020-19, 45 Station Road. John, you around? I think this is you. Sarah, is Malone around?
There he is.
Yes, he's here.
You're on mute, John. There you go.
Hello, John Malone, Fergus Malone Architecture, representing the Valences. We've made some, responded to comments from our last meeting. We've addressed wetlands requirements and believe we've addressed the civil requirements in terms of the what to do with stormwater. We've gotten notes from on engineering, which shows the items that are required for variance. And we have some notes from Suzanne Nolan about plantings. I think the one recommendation she made was to reestablish some shade tolerant plantings in the rain garden area. That's certainly something we could add. I don't know, Cesar, something that you want to look at specifically, or
Well, the only question.
Let me know where you'd like.
You know, the variances are, you know which variances you need, is a far
Right, so
coverage and the 2.5 stories.
Right, so their coverage variance is not required. So the variances that we'll be asking for is coverage, the coverage variance that's associated with the hardscape that's in place right now. Again, the project that we're proposing does not expand the existing coverage of the building.
But you had some installations that were
right.
not
There's
approved. So
yeah, there's some undocumented work that needs.
That's the work, undocumented work. That's part of this application, which created some coverage issues. Now, so you know, they're existing. So you know, it's still an issue of variance. I'm not criticizing. I'm not limiting. I'm just making it a fact. That's all. And what is it? The 2.5 story.
The 2.5 story variance is because the way the house is situated, the basement story counts as a full story because more than 4 feet of it is sitting out of the ground. It's like 4.5 feet, but it's still counted as a story. And what we're proposing is a partial story on the second floor. So there'll be a portion of the building that will remain 2 stories and a portion of the building that will be main store 3 stories. It's about half and half. We've had a situation like that on a slope site in front of the ZBA before, and they agreed that was a reasonable approach to that kind of situation. So
the only other issue I'd like to discuss is you're making it a bit higher, 8 feet higher. And is there an issue with view preservation because of the new height? I mean, it is on the bottom of a hill. The house to the east is uphill. So if you can make a visual presentation that the 8 feet is not affecting the view issues.
Okay. If I can share screen, we did put together a visual impact preservation. Let me pull that up.
Let me go back while John's doing that. My notes indicate there's an FAR variance, Ed and Doug.
I mentioned that.
Oh, you did? Okay, sorry, I missed that. Okay.
I thought I did anyway. I said FAR and coverage.
Okay.
So Marianne, the variance is not required. We calculated the allowable based on.
Yeah, Marianne, sorry, that was the application data sheet was never revised, so they don't need a FAR variance. I checked that today.
Oh, they don't. Okay. Okay.
All right, I'll cross it out. Go ahead. What's the view preservation issue, if there is any? Go ahead.
So just a little smaller. So we took shots uphill facing the river. So this is the view from across the street. I don't know if you guys can see both of those at the same time. You know, showing the addition. Again, this is a forested area. We don't see any visual impact of river views there. There's a little area of sky, given the existing planting, that would be affected by the addition.
What about the house to the
east? Right.
Going up.
So in this condition, Cesar, there's. Sorry, I'm sorry, Cesar, you broke up there a little bit.
The house going towards the tunnel. What is the extension, the 8-foot extension, do to the view of the house, the view from the house towards the tunnel, east?
Also, to the house on the east side. So these are views from across the street. Again, we don't believe there's any visual impact here. This is from the driveway of the neighboring house to this side.
Right-hand corner, the little piece of gray coming in.
Right, that's the house to the uphill side. Yeah.
Or what are their views like with the new 8-foot?
Well, right now they're completely shielded by, if you can see what I'm doing, they're shielded by these trees in this location. So again, we don't believe there's any impact to that house from the change. Here it is again. You can sort of see there's already tree cover separating the two lots.
All right.
So yeah, our position is there's not a impact to existing river views. You know, there's always some visual impact when a house gets expanded, but you know, we don't believe there's any impact to existing river views. We also, these images are all taken on the Station Road side. Just so you guys understand, I did go over to the north side, the properties on the north side, and the house isn't visible from the Barney Park area, just in case you guys were worried about that. So the house is entirely not visible from that area.
And you do know we would like to see some wetland plants in that rain garden.
Yeah, that's something we can certainly add. We can certainly add. You know, I don't think I can talk to Marianne about what she might recommend in there. There are
Not
planting
Marianne.
beds between.
Suzanne.
I'm sorry, Marianne. We can talk about it if you want, but it's probably not.
Not in my
Best use of
wheelhouse.
our time. Yeah. No, I can talk to Suzanne about what she might recommend it, but see, there are planting beds between the level spreaders, so we can fill those planting beds.
I saw pictures of them and they look like they need a little refurbishing. Anyway, any comment from the board? Kevin?
Can you just clarify what is the variance that's open? Just, I know there was some back and forth on that to clarify. FAR is not in the picture, but what's the variance, the nature of the variance?
So the variances that are being requested are not for height. The building is under the allowable height. Even with the sloping of the site, it's 4 stories. So the code both limits the height, but it also limits what it considers 2.5 stories. So because the basement level of this is considered a story, you know, if the grade was different, it would be 1.5 stories, but it's 2.5. So the portion that we're adding is going to be considered 3 stories. The other portion that's being left will be considered 2 stories. So, you know, in one sense, you could average that together and say over the course of the roof, it's 2.5 stories, but that's not how the code reads. So we'll be asking for a variance for that. And then on the coverage side, there are some existing patios on the rear of the house that are not documented as part of the project that was produced 10 years ago. There's no as-built that shows that. So we're trying to legalize those, or we're required to include those as new construction in the project. So the project that we're actually proposing to construct does not increase the hardscape in any way, but the documentation of the undocumented work increases the hardscape. So we need a variance for that.
Okay, thank you.
Dan?
No questions, Caesar.
George? Calling George. You're on mute, George.
I can't comment on this. It's too close to my house.
Oh, okay. All right. Any comment from the public? Is there anybody out there, Sarah?
Somebody has raised their hand and there's nothing in the chat.
Did you say no one has raised their hand or someone did?
No one has raised their hand and no one comment.
All right. Anybody on the board, excluding George, has any problems with this going to the ZBA?
No.
No.
Me neither. Okay, and then you'll have to come back and we'll just look for the plantings and you know, work with Suzanne, not Marianne, about the planting, and we'll see that after you come back from the CBA.
I can review them with Marianne if you want.
Not Marianne, Suzanne. You can review them with Marianne too. Maybe she's interested.
I'm always like meeting with John.
Okay. John, we're done.
Yeah, that's I'm fine. I have one more, so Sarah's just got to kick me off.
Okay. We're done with 45. That's number 6. Number 7. Where is number 7? 2020-17, 31 Matheson Park. Fitzpatrick. Anybody representing Fitzpatrick?
Yes, they're here.
Chuck Willett, can the board hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good evening,
Presume
everyone. Chuck Willett, Vince Velatico Architects, representing Don Fitzpatrick on the 31 Matheson project.
Okay, you're on.
So after the conclusion of the last meeting, we met with Ed, went through some of the concerns about the overall height, did some more diagrams for the board showing the existing house versus the proposed house. I think where we're at right now is we're probably making the request to be sent over to the ZBA for a stories definition and the coverage.
I'm sorry, a what definition?
Stories definition. So there were some conversations between Ed and I about the definitions between a basement and between a story.
Oh, okay. Mhm.
So do you mean an
on that-
interpretation or Ed? Is he going for an interpretation or a variance?
No, they've resolved most of the stories issues and the height issues with enclosing the staircase.
Okay.
Right. So then following up on that, Han Engineering.
Before we get off the height, could you show, because I think it's important, the difference between the height of the existing house and the height of what is proposed? And the difference, if there is one.
Can you tell me if that screen share worked?
Yes, it did.
So the outline that you see at the top here in the dotted is the existing.
Okay.
The dark shaded is the proposed. So it is a pretty significant difference.
Do you have a number for how significant?
That
must be the scale, so.
Yeah, so I would say it's probably at least 12 to 14 feet lower.
Okay.
The biggest change in the site, if I switch over to a site plan showing the proposed versus the existing, the proposed dwelling is outlined here in Hudson Engineering's drawings. And you'll see that the orientation of our proposed house is more towards the bridge and the views. So here you have existing retaining walls that basically retain the entire existing structure. Our issue was basically here where the existing grade drops off. So right now there's an existing plateau. So that's what we were working with Ed on.
Okay, there's a question of whether a 5-foot bonus is applicable or not, and you'll have to straighten that out, Ed.
Correct. So that's where I was headed with. We received the comments this morning from Han Engineering. I have Hudson on the line. There was some conversations that happened there between how to calculate the steep slopes. And I believe I have representation from Hudson on the line.
Yeah, Albeda from Hudson Engineering. So with regards to the slope analysis, based on the code, the terminology used is average grade. And based on our slope analysis, when you do the average grade within the building envelope, there are areas that are so steep compared to the flat areas on site, the average grade or the mean slope ends up being 15.52. Therefore, it meets the requirement. But there's, again, a discussion about how to interpret it, about whether it's the average grade as stated in the code or whether it's based on surface area of steep sloped areas versus slopes below 15%. Because visually, as you can see, there are more wide areas.
Our interpretation about it has always been it's the building envelope. Okay.
Yeah, but is it based on, if you will, there's more white area than green area as shown on the screen? Or is it based on actual average?
Unfortunately, this, and you have a good point, and that's an argument you're welcome to use at the ZBA.
Okay.
So Ed, my question, I'm going to repeat my question then. Are they going to the ZBA for an interpretation or?
No. Well, we're sending them for variance. If they want to go for interpretation, they can, but that's not.
Your read of it is that they need a variance.
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, Bob, yeah, we could discuss that. We could discuss that tomorrow too. I mean, you could take a rock, a rock cliff that's vertically straight up along the edge of the whole thing, and then you average it, and then all of a sudden you would get credit the way you calculated it, which is, I mean, so
Yeah, some of the other
it would throw off the number. So
and some other hindrance about it is the existing structure is flat.
Yep.
So there's no slopes on that. So that's another conversation to have at ZBA.
Gotcha.
And I think adding on to that conversation with having it in the ZBA is the reason that it's flat is all of the existing site walls.
That's yeah, exactly.
So it's all terrained up. If we were to leave this existing wall that has the top of wall of, say, I went to the existing, I can pull that up here. Top of wall was just a little over 86. That would actually put us at 36 feet rather than 40 feet if we were going off of an existing wall, existing grade. So it's really just an area that is, around the left elevation corner, and it's just outside of the terraced footprint of an existing structure.
Okay. All right, about the coverage, you're over, so that needs a variance, but it's, from what I understand, is it less than the existing coverage, even though it's over?
That is correct.
But you do need a variance.
Correct.
Yes.
And view presentation, the new building is at least 11 feet lower than the existing building, so.
Correct.
Do you have anything on view preservation, any
Yes,
other than it's lower?
Yes, so this was part of the original set, where we basically took and identified properties around. All right, it's taking a bit to load here. So the numeric numbers inside of each property. So this is 29 Matheson Park. So this is a property to the left. You will see this is a view of the existing and this is a view of the proposed. So the decreased view is a small sliver here. This is pictures from the actual site. If we move over to 33, you'll see that their view corridor actually decreases slightly here, but it's also significantly lower. And then from 39, which is across the street, there's a slight decrease through here. But again, all of the other views that were blocked are now significantly lower. So no major impact to any of the surrounding sites.
Well, thank you for that presentation. Now, I think you got a comment that we need an arborist report about the trees coming out and trees going in, species and all that. I think in general, our landscape architect was very pleased with the planting plan. But I thought there was missing an actual arborist report about the trees.
Yeah, I have Howard from Hollander on the call as well. We got delayed on that just due to all the storms and arborists being booked up. But Howard,
right, that's true. Okay,
Howard,
but you're aware that it's needed.
Yes. This is Howard Williams with Hollander Design, Landscape Architects. Yes, we received the report just yesterday, so we'll be submitting that with our next.
And I suggest you work with Suzanne Nolan about the content of the arborist report, so you don't do something that she's going to say, "Oh, gee, you didn't do what I thought you were going to do." Okay. It has to do with species coming out and species going in, and right. See if there's an equalization of what came out and what's going in. Let's see. I'm looking at my notes. Any comment from the board? Kevin?
No comment.
Dan?
Looks good to me, Caesar. Thank you.
George?
Okay, so following suit with the presentation that was done previously, this is a new building and you're asking for variances. And I don't see the hardship for these variances, nor do I see the necessary reason for the variances. So I understand that the height is something that has to be determined between you and Ed, but when it comes to the coverage, can you explain why you have to be over the coverage? What is the overriding reason for that?
I would say it's the overall program. We are, I believe 14% under the existing coverage that is currently on the site. Some of the coverage
that is a non-complying condition, correct?
I'm sorry, repeat.
the existing is non-complying.
It's non-compliant by today's codes. I do not know when it was built and what the codes were at that time.
Right. So I'm just saying that you had an option to leave the house as is, and that's an existing non-compliant condition, and there be it, so be it. If someone bought that house and wanted to add to it, we would say no. So what you're trying to do is, I understand, is say, okay, I'm going to be better than it was before, but I'm still not going to follow today's codes. So typically when some, for new construction, one should follow the existing laws that are in place. And if not, then there has to be a valid reason why. And we went through this on a previous application. And so I find it hard for myself to say, oh, this is fine, and go to task with someone else there. So I need better understanding of why you need this coverage other than program. Program is an owner related thing. It isn't a village. It doesn't fit within the codes of the village. So it would be hard pressed for me to say, oh, well, they just want it, so it's okay. And then the next person that comes and says, wait a second, you gave it to them, you should give it to me. It becomes what happens thereafter kind of effect. So I don't understand why you can't follow the coverage requirements of the village. And perhaps you can explain that better.
I would say some of the reasons are based on the topography of the site and the amount of site walls that we need just to develop and retain. One of the main focuses of this project was to lower the house. And by doing so, there's retaining walls that are needed at the front of the driveway and around the back of the property. Those are taking up some of the coverage.
But I mean, I remember specifically, we had another client, I think in Matheson Park, and that was over on coverage, and they figured out a way to make it so that it fit within the coverage. And so I understand the need for having outdoor space and retaining walls and things like that. But just by saying that you're lowering the house, that's a good thing. But to say that these are absolutely needed, it sounds like it's more of a program, like a wish versus a need. Is that correct?
I would say it's more of a balance between wishes and rewards to the I think the overall site plan, the view corridor.
But see, in essence, what's happening here, again, it's you have to think in terms of the overall perspective of others that are going to come to this planning board. We're given a certain requirements to follow, and you're asking us just because you want to make it so that we don't follow those. And for me, just in principle, I need better reasoning than just that the owner would like it. That doesn't seem to necessarily follow, because at the end of the day, when things are then built, there are people that complain about the size of something. So I need a better explanation from you of why this is absolutely needed besides just the program requirements from your owner.
For clarity, before you answer, you said, I think you said the existing house was 14% over. And what is the overage on the current proposed plan? Oh, I'm not hearing anything anymore.
It's 16.8% over the allowable. Is that what your question was, Caesar?
My question was, the existing house was a certain percentage, and what's the percentage of proposed? He said it was less, but it's still over. So
the proposed house is 16.8% over. The existing is 36.6% over. So it's a reduction of 20% over. Allowable.
But 18% is still significant, as George was pointing out.
Yes, but again, it's, I guess, per the code, the size of the lot is quite big. It's 231,000 square feet. But in the code, the extra allowable over the lower limit, I think, is somewhere around 2%. So relative to the whole site, it's not a significant difference. But again, based on the allowable coverage, it's always going to come out much bigger. And we've had experiences with the zoning board previously where when you're making a massive reduction, which in this case, it's almost 2,000 square feet, the zoning board has been more amenable to it, as again, we're lowering the height in one scenario and also lowering the coverage. So yes, we're still asking for variances per today's code, but for all intents and purposes, it is an improvement on what's there or the code's requirements. Non-compliant still, but I guess closer to what's required.
George, given your concern, would you be adverse to sending this to the zoning board? I might be.
No, I have, frankly, I don't really have an issue with it going to the zoning board, nor would I have an issue with Stearns Ridge going to the zoning board. But the one thing I won't do is say that this is acceptable as a planning board in my eyes, because I don't. I understand exactly what Abdel is saying, is that it is better than what is there before, but what's over there now would never get approved now. So if that was an open site like Stearns, I would have the same argument here. So yes, it's to your benefit, and if the zoning board is willing to allow something like that, that's their prerogative. But as I see it, I'm hard pressed to figure out a way that a new building has to have any kind of variance unless there's a hardship that the site makes, and I don't see that. So, and I don't think it's been clearly explained, and I think the applicant has just basically said it's a program requirement to get this coverage. So I'm not saying anything about the height, because it sounds like that's something that needs to be worked out, and isn't it isn't an issue visually for me as the other Stearns Ridge one was. If that makes any sense.
And given what George said, Dan, you have any thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, George has much more experience in this area, you know, being a planning board member as well as professionally. You know, again, it's over 5 acres and it's somewhat of an improvement of what was there. So I'm a little ambivalent. Again, do you just send it to the ZBA or?
And that is one of the points. I mean, being such a large acreage and having this restriction of only 2% above a certain number is rather restrictive in overall for having that size of a lot. And with
Kevin,
with the 20% reduction.
Kevin, you have any thoughts?
I mean, I certainly understand George's argument, but I don't think I am so adamantly against it.
Well, I tend to agree with George, so we're 2 and 2. Initially I think they need to come back before it goes to the ZBA and work on the coverage and straighten out the height thing so that it's more definitive.
Why can't they go? I mean, why wouldn't it be allowed for them to go, which it's to happen before, they go to the zoning board without a recommendation from the planning board?
Just recognize though, George, that you could do that, but just recognize that if they get the variance from the zoning board, then your hands are kind of tied. You can't, if you take the position that we think it's too big, it compromises that position if they went to court on it. As do you remember what happened some years ago with the application on Overview Road? That's what the issue is. Is there, you know, one thing that's stuck out to me is there's huge parking areas which got included in your coverage. I think part of that is what drives the numbers up. Can you look at reducing them?
The driveway parking areas were not part of the coverage calculation. They were called out as areas.
The driveways aren't, but the parking areas are. Doug, was it?
So Marianne, Chuck, can you bring up the site plan to show the parking? So Marianne, we struggle to find parking areas because most of us turn around to get out of the garage.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't considered parking. You treated it all as driveway?
With the front entrance, because there's really not enough room to park a car and then drive around.
Okay. Okay. So it was all counted as driveway.
Yeah, I mean, you can force a number in there, but it's not like.
Yeah, well, that doesn't help them anyway.
Right. but we did look at it.
Okay.
George, I can go either way on this. How strong are you feeling about this?
I think
ZBA
it's a principle thing for me. It's, I can't in good faith say, oh, this one's fine and Stearns Ridge isn't. To me, we shouldn't be as subjective to this. We're given laws that we're supposed to follow, and then to figure out how to massage those things to work within those laws. And to just kind of willy-nilly do this, I'm not comfortable doing that, because to me, it becomes very subjective, and I think that's when these things sort of fall apart. So no, I think that new construction should not require any zoning, whatever you call it. I just don't think that's in principle correct, unless there's a real specific need or requirement, or really a take, so to speak. And that's what, as I understand, the principle is. Otherwise, what do we have these laws for? We just kind of go in and subjectively say, oh, well, it looks good and okay.
Okay, I think you have to come back before you go to the zoning board and either satisfy the absolute need for the coverage of whatever we said, 18%. And you still have the height thing to settle. It's not a big deal on the height because, again, you're like 12 feet lower than the existing building, but the coverage is an issue. And I understand the idea of the slippery slope of, oh, gee, you let those guys go and just for no absolute reason. You really didn't say it other than that's what the client wants. Which is not a bad reason, but not a hardship thing. So I think you need to come back to address the coverage, and we'll see where we go from there, and get the issue of whether you got a 5-foot bonus or not. If you have a 5-foot bonus, there's no height variance. From what I understand, I'm not sure of that.
So comparing the two sites, the previous one and this one, the other site had nothing on it. It had not been developed yet. That's one glaring difference. The other question I have is, in an effort to be approved to go in front of the zoning board for the coverage, could we possibly eliminate this fire pit and this dining area to get the percentage lower?
Well, that's up to you.
But if we presented that to you as an agreement now, would you allow us, if we got that 16.8%?
Well, I wouldn't say we would allow it, but it would be certainly something to consider. You know, there would be good consideration given to it.
With that change, would you allow it? Would you approve us to go to the zoning board of appeals now?
It depends on how it looks when you do it. I can't pre-approve something without seeing it.
We don't have the numbers either.
Howard, do you have those numbers by chance?
The numbers roughly, I believe, for the proposed walks, we have it labeled as 824, meaning it would go from 9843 to 9,019.
We don't operate on instantaneous submittals, so you're going to have to come back with whatever you're going to do with the fire pit and whatever else you said.
It would just be a decrease of the 824.
Yep. We'd still be over by 7.1% roughly.
Which is a decrease of 23%.
9%, yeah.
10%, 11%.
Yep.
I meant over existing, correct. But it would be an additional, correct, over what we were originally asking for. It would be a decrease of 10%.
I come back and explain that. You still need to get into the issue of why.
But could we not argue that in front of the zoning board, given that the history is the zoning board has?
Well, it has to go through us, and I agree with George. The next guy comes in, and we're on a slippery slope of does coverage mean anything at all? I mean, it's in the code for a reason. And for a new house, I agree with George. Come on back. Ed, does site plan all get covered, get squared away? I know we had a big issue on the site plan.
They're on their way. They have a bunch of engineering issues, but nothing like unachievable. I mean, I don't want to advocate for the application, but he did demonstrate why the coverage is more. They took it out of the height. They took the existing building and pushed it down, so it didn't take views from the south away for the river.
If we were to add that square footage back in, then we wouldn't have the advantage of the height.
Right. If you left the building alone and renovated the building and left it that high, it's the same FAR. It's still a little less, but.
In the house that we have proposed is working with the topography of the property, the natural topography. If you bring the topography over from the the adjoining lots, we're really trying to do something that melds in much better than what is there. So by working up that hill, it definitely, to Ed's point, it did cost us some square footage.
Right, but I think that, and I agree with that, and I appreciate that. Okay, so I get that, but it still gets back to, I've done all these things, but then I want to have extra parts to this that don't comply. So it's like, it is one of those, and it's back to like the next person that comes here, is that we had someone that came and said, well, we're going to put this green wall around this house, and then we want to be over coverage by 1,000%. And because it was just all green around, you wouldn't see it, it's okay. I'm not saying you're doing the same thing, and I do respect what you're doing. I just have, in principle, I'm sure that you can figure out a way to do this house so that it does both. And I just hear a kind of a pushback about, no, we've done enough for this. And then it gets into a principle, as far as I'm concerned, of, is that enough? And is that right for the village? Because I still see this as what's going to happen next time. And those are my concerns. So I applaud you for what you've done, as opposed to getting rid of this house that's there. You're decreasing the effect of what is on that property for the village, and that's a good thing. But I just need to be further convinced of why this is as far as you can go, knowing that the law says you should do this. Okay, so it seems to me like you stopped short, and I'm just afraid for the next applicant.
I guess the only thing I can say is, if we renovated what was there, we wouldn't be required to be compliant, correct?
Absolutely, and I could say nothing. Okay, it's because you're here doing this, so that's not really a comparison. You're more than willing to do that, and feel free, but you're asking us to waive certain things because you're doing it. You're improving what's already there.
Correct.
And my suggestion is that this is a
increase.
I'm sorry?
Yes, because it significantly helps the village in many different ways.
Right, but you're falling short because you're building this new house. So if you were to take the old house and change that and alter that house by reducing it, we'd be all happy.
But I wouldn't have to.
No, but you're now coming in with a new house. And this is where it gets into the principle of it, is that new construction should follow all the rules as of today, right? That's how I see it. That's how I've followed all the way through here, right or wrong. That's what I've done. And I've never heard a good reason why that shouldn't be followed. Again, for the same reasons that I explained. It has nothing to do with you. It really has to do with why we have this planning board. Why am I here? I mean, if this is going to be something where someone just comes in and says, oh, I did a little bit better than what was there, is it okay? Then that becomes very subjective. Whereas I'm not trying to put my subjectivity to this. I'm trying to follow the laws that are there and to understand. And I'm trying to figure out a way that you are complying with that. And that's why I asked that question. And you answered, basically, it's a program requirement. Your owner, the applicant, wants to have X, Y, and Z. So that's where the the distinction is, I guess.
But X, Y, and Z is a result of making a lot of things better for the village. That's where we would look from, from an applicant and a taxpayer point of view for a compromise from the village.
And guess what? You might get that from the zoning board, okay? But as a planning board, I don't feel like I have the authority to say, oh, well, this is good enough. And then have someone else come back and say, well, you gave them this, why don't I get it? It becomes a slippery slope, as Caesar said.
So going back to an earlier comment that was made, do we have a path to go in front of the zoning board without the planning board's approval, or is that discouraged or an impossibility? Or can we talk a little bit about what that would entail?
It would entail the planning board sending a note to the ZBA saying we cannot recommend approval because we have not finished reviewing this application.
Okay.
And then we would state the reasons why, or the reason in this case.
Understood.
Okay. So I recommend you come back and address, George has a very convincing, to me anyway, argument, and I'm convinced that you need to come back and fix the coverage issue.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and actually, if I may ask a question, Caesar, just so we are not wasting too much of our clients' effort here, are you saying that we must come to the absolute maximum coverage that's allowable, or simply reduce the coverage that we currently have in the plan?
I think we'll consider any reduction that you have. It's hard to predict hypothetical situations, and we'll take a look at what you got. You might want to say plan A, plan B, and you might present a plan A, and then if we say that's no good, you have in your pocket plan B.
Okay, thank you.
But in this case, if this case with plan B was removing the 824 of walks and getting the coverage down.
I'm not gonna pre-approve anything just on that. You need to come back and present something. You could say that may be plan A, and then if we say, well, geez, you didn't go down low enough, then you have in your pocket plan B, and you get down to 0. Maybe we might accept something that's 1% over. I don't know. It depends on what is entailed in that 1% or 2% over. I guess I have to ask for any comment in the public. Sarah, you got anything out there? Hello, Sarah. I think my computer froze.
Sorry about that. Tara Fitzpatrick has made several comments in the chat. You're actually a panelist, so you can speak if you would like. Tara?
Her last comment is I'm unable to comment. Program not allowing her to. That was as a minute ago.
Okay. Well, she's got quite a few. Let me just scroll to the top. She had a question. Can a variance also be permitted when structure is not visible from other spaces, does not adversely affect neighbors? 5.24 acres and is improving neighbors' views. Much more green efficient house. Owner wanted a smaller, quiet, more efficient home. This is an improvement to the neighborhood. Coverage is over because we lowered roof line to make house less bulky and looming. More one with the environment, quiet, respectful of the environment and views. And she also commented, the neighbor wants to take down a massive inefficient home and make something respectful of views and neighbors. Compared to the neighborhood, 31 is the largest property. Square footage is significantly lower, 800 square feet acres versus average of about 5,000 acres of neighbors. Concerned that there are now 3 vacant houses surrounding 33 Matheson so far. The property taxes will be dropping significantly based on Douglas Zeta Jones sales and the 3 surrounding houses in Matheson. Those were her comments.
I think the discussions between George and the applicant, covered the comments about it. While it's an improvement, it's still the coverage becomes an issue. So there's good news and bad news. Anything else, Sarah?
That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
That was number 7 on the agenda. We'll go to number 8, 2020-24, 34 Lewis Road.
If I might say something before that, if you look at the chat area, Patty has commented, and I won't read the whole thing, but obviously he's been listening. And he says at the end that there was a lawsuit being brought against the village with the court deciding that the village could not solve zoning through variances. They noted that if zoning doesn't work for the common property in the zone, then you should change the code, not issue a variance for every property in the zone.
Okay, thank you.
And magically, here he is.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, George, that was the Hart's Mountain. There was a whole issue with, they had brought a lawsuit that was, the concept at the time was it was a friendly lawsuit, and the lawsuit was settled by granting variances. And what someone else brought a lawsuit against the village for having done that, and the court decided that you cannot, effectively, you can't settle zoning. If the zoning doesn't work for the zoning district it's applied to, then you change the zoning code. You don't grant everyone a variance. And I'm not saying that you're doing that. I was just responding to the comment that was being made. I think, if you're dealing with properties that are unusual, that's when you do have zoning as a use. The challenge is that there was a time many years ago when, we were younger, and it was different than now. The village definitely has a different tone, and I think it's for the better. And, I can understand the concerns with granting variances, but, there's a balancing act, which is sometimes difficult to find the right balance. But
okay, Patty, are we going to start on 34 Lewis?
Yep. So hopefully this will be faster, because this is our first meeting, and we got Doug's comments today, so we know we've got some work to do. And one of the things, again, this one we have to also do that steep slopes analysis so that we can demonstrate that in this area where we're proposing building the house, it indeed is exceeding 15%. So we're allowed to have a 40-foot height limit instead of a maximum height limit from the lowest point of grade, and not limited to the 35. So this is, I don't know if you guys all know where Halsey's Pond is. So this is where you drive in on Park, and you've got that that walkway that goes to Halsey's Pond. This is the property that's on the east side of that. The west side of that is that property that's currently being considered for 3 houses. The applicant in this has, basically grew up in this house on this property. So she has purchased the property from her, for her family's estate, and she wants to build a new house. When she first talked to me about it, I said, well, let's go up and take a look at your house, because you got a house on the property and it might make more sense to try and fix that instead of building a new one. But when I went and looked at the condition of the house, I could understand that the logical thing to do at this point is to remove that house and build the house that they want. And part of that was that getting up to this house is actually quite tricky. The Siegels live over here, and the house being up here is kind of close to their pool and other stuff. So we've been trying to take that into consideration. when we've worked on this. So here's, this is existing conditions on the site. One of the concerns here, that we have a little blow up over here. I'll just go to this. Here's that corner of the property. Here's the mapped Halsey's Pond. We're 125 feet. That was one of the questions that Doug had. What I'm going to ask Rakesh to do is to put that on his survey so he can corroborate, whatever that edge is. But I think we are good. We're certainly not doing any work within 100 feet of Halsey's Pond. I think we're quite a distance away from it. But
well, while you got that, come back to that Halsey Pond. Are there some wetlands in here somewhere?
Patty, there's a biofilter to the south that filters Legend Hollow. You're gonna need to mark that out and make sure you're okay with that as well.
Okay, is that adjacent to us?
Well, you can see the stream. You can see the stream line.
I thought I added that, but maybe I didn't.
This stream line here?
Yep, and there's a wetland that surrounds it.
Oh, there it is.
So we have to
Flag it.
We're 100 feet away from that, right?
Right, from the edge of the wetland.
Yep.
Well, 25 really, from the edge of the wetland.
Right. Does the village have that mapped at this point, or is that something we have to have picked up?
Give me a call. Send me an email in the morning. I'll take a look.
Yeah.
I'm sure we do.
Yeah.
It would be part of the subdivision map.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure you probably have somewhere too.
Maybe. I have a lot of papers around here. So here's, we referred to demolition. Obviously, in this one, we have a lot of demolition. We're taking the whole house out. We're taking a major portion of the driveway out. There's some foundations and some, kind of dilapidated other structures on the site. Those are all being removed. We're also taking out a significant number of trees in here. We've had the tree arborist out. He's doing the assessment on it, but he also noted that a lot of, trees that I was actually thinking, do we want to try and move the house so we can keep this one? Because it's a, 48-inch tree or something. And he pointed out that the whole tree was completely hollow and, would be good for nesting, but you don't want it next to a house. So he's going to give us that report and we'll submit that so that everyone can take a look at it. Here's our site plan on it. We've proposed the house. Below that, there's an existing retaining wall that looks like it's probably 100 and something years old. Oops. And what we've done is we've positioned the house down below that, and we've actually built this house kind of back into the ground. The master bedroom wing, which is this portion back here, the grade actually comes up about halfway up the first floor wall. So the idea is coming up this driveway, having this courtyard, and the house becomes this promontory from which you can take advantage of some pretty spectacular views. This one, I don't think there's anything wrong with variances, but we do not need a variance as far as I know on this house, provided that we can proof out that we are over 15% in the building envelope. So this one is compliant.
You're talking about height now.
Well, the height is, we do have to prove that we're over 15% in there, at which point we are compliant. But we have done an evaluation. We just need to get you that done by the engineers so that it's, signed, sealed, and delivered, and done by somebody who does that, as a professional. We've done the floor area ratios, the site coverage. We're compliant.
But let's stop there. From what I understand, the coverage numbers need to be fixed up to match. Doug, you got a comment on the?
No, actually, the coverage on this one, I believe, is okay.
Oh, okay. Then I wrote a note here that it needed fixing. Okay.
Yeah. There was a 20 square foot difference between one of the plans and one of the other plans. Patty, you have to just do some housekeeping on that.
Sure.
Just check all your pages. There was something that was not the same, but it wasn't a large difference.
Okay. We'll check that, make sure we're compliant with everything.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was the data sheet and one of the plans or
very possible, because we
two of the plans. It wasn't a big deal. It just needs to be housekeeping.
Yep. Well, one of the challenges this day and age is everybody's sitting in different towns when they're trying to work together. So Bradley's sitting up in Somers. I have no idea what he's looking at. So it's getting those things coordinated is not easy. But we will do that. So here we've crossed over into Hudson Engineering, and I think they are on the line, hopefully. And I don't know if there are questions pertaining.
I'm not sure as far as, oh, sorry, Patty. I was going to say, as far as my comments, we can handle those offline if that's.
Oh, yeah, so that's fine. I'm trying to see if they sign on because I don't want to have to talk about it. It's not my forte.
Well, if he did the drainage, then there was an issue with the site plan. And the site plan doesn't have the drainage. It's on another set of plans that needs to be coordinated better so that there's no confusion of who's doing what.
Yeah, we show no storm drainage on any of, Laura's here with me, sitting here, but none of her drawings show anything to do with drainage. We do have some retaining wall information on our drawings, and that we'll make sure that we're good with that being coordinated. But I think everything that has to do with drainage is on the Hudson.
Yeah. So Patty, yeah, I think that there's some confusion with your demolition plan has some site plan notes on it.
Okay.
We would like to see on your architectural site plan. We want a site plan, so you don't have to draw out the retention system, but you should mark it on your site plan and refer to Hudson Engineers plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's try to tidy up the 7 pages to all reference, one page to reference the other 6.
Right.
Instead of having 6 pages that we find conflicting stuff later on.
Yeah, and we got Hudson stuff the same day we were submitting, so
that's your problem.
I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining.
Yeah, no, and I'm just trying. What I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to make a cohesive application that's easy to review,
right,
and easy to move along.
Yeah, one place I'm thinking is easy to see. There's probably not. We're showing limits of disturbance.
Yeah. No. It was more on your demolition plan. You had site plan notes. If you go back to there was one of the demolition plans that you submitted. There you go.
Site development notes on existing conditions.
Yeah, a little odd.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. We'll take a look if we even need those. Those.
Whatever. It's just odd.
Yep. I mean, part of it was just finding space.
Yeah, that should never be the excuse.
I'm not giving excuses. I'm just saying what we did wrong. Okay.
There's space there.
Actually, a lot of space on that one.
Yeah, so I think that's the answer. Let me get the notes that have to do with site on.
Yeah, and make sure they're not conflicting. Some of Hudson Engineering's are conflicting some of those other notes. Nothing big, but it'd be nice to have one set of notes.
Yep, makes sense. This is their details. They did the stormwater management analysis. And then I don't know if Susan Janchil is still on, but I think this is another one that Suzanne Nolan identified as a lush landscaping plan, which...
I'm pretty satisfied with it, but you still need the arborist report of what's coming out and what's going in.
We will do that and make it work.
And, the other 2 things both have to do with view. Can you do a rendering of the view from Halsey Pond and the village path to Halsey Pond? Just what the house is going to look like if you're walking on the pathway around Halsey Pond.
Sure.
And you mentioned the house to the rear. There's 2 houses, or at least one anyway.
I'll get photos.
Up on Lewis Road. What is it? What does the house look like from up there? I mean, obviously it's further
the
down
backyard
the
of
hill.
the Seagulls. Yeah, I'll get photos from the backyards of those so we can see how much they're actually seeing of this. There's no house that's in this zone here. That's all kind of hillside. The houses are up on top, so I think we'll be pretty good with it. But being able to show you that with photographs and renderings will answer those questions for real.
Well, yeah, and the render, I guess more so the rendering as how it looks from Halsey Pond.
Right. So the idea with that is that we would say, if you can see where my cursor is, we'd probably have like a view looking towards Halsey's Pond this way, maybe something along the way where you could see this and what it looks like from there, and then coming, at Halsey's Pond, looking back. And
there's a little fire trail that goes up to the Legends, goes past the tee box of the golf course. I forget what hole it is, but it goes up. And maybe
does that kind of follow that wetland area?
Yeah, take a picture. Well, there's a walkway that goes up to Legend Hollows. It's meant
Okay.
for fire trucks. There's a house up there in the Legends, somewhere up in the corner up here.
Okay.
Up the upper right-hand corner.
I will go and
Yeah, take a
take
look
a
at
nice
it.
walk.
Yeah. All right. and you're
I
gonna-
don't think you need me to go through elevations and plans and stuff.
Well, you need to talk to Ed about the height verification.
Yep.
Any comment from the rest of the board, Kevin,
No, nothing that wasn't covered.
Dan,
It looks like everything was reviewed there, Caesar.
George?
Yeah, it's fine. No, I think that my biggest concern now is to make sure that these, I noticed in the report that there was some 47-inch, like Patty was talking about, trees that are being removed.
Yeah.
And if in essence they really are dead, then so be it. But if they're not, then I think that we should follow Patty's suit in terms of trying to make it so you keep those and you move the house accordingly.
Right. Well, hopefully the arborist report will not only say species out and species in, but what's coming out. If it's coming out, and the health of that tree coming out should be articulated.
Yeah,
Yep.
47-inch diameter is almost a heritage. So.
Yep, I agree.
Okay. Any comment from the public, Sarah? Ran out of water. Sarah, anything from the public?
There's nobody raising their hand, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay. Thank you, Patty. We'll see you next time.
Thanks. See you guys later.
Okay. I'm going to take a 2-minute break. I got to get a glass of water. Ow. Okay, we're finished with that. We're on to the last one. 2020-23, 2 South Astor Street, Asterbrook. This is water, not gin. Is there anybody here for Asterbrook?
Yeah, John Malone.
Hey, John Malone, representing Asterbrook. This is a project to modify the existing building south of the Trent building to use the ground level as a parking lot. We received comments based on what we submitted. In general, the project is to remove the walls from the lowest level and modify that lowest level in order to allow it to be used for parking. Caesar, I know it's late. What would be the best way to go through this? Do you want to review comments that we received from Han as a way to organize it? Do you want to go to a specific place first?
Well, the back, let's go do the drainage. Any drainage is going to have to go through Metro North unless you have something else. And you're going to need Metro
Right.
North approval. Have you explored the Metro North approval?
Our first step was to confirm that, we're doing what the village is expecting here, and then we would move into that. We don't see, the water that is coming down the hill and associated with that building goes through the Metro North property on its way to the river. So we don't really see another path for that water in terms of storing it on site. We could take a look at that, but Hudson didn't think that that was a feasible approach, so we could take a look at that. So either we're getting it through Metro North or not. I mean, I guess we'd have to come back to it if we can't. I think our first, what's being proposed now, Caesar, is what we
Not gonna let
think
it
is the
go.
right answer.
We're not gonna let it go until, we can't approve something that
No, I understand. No.
an approval down the road that you may not get.
Sorry.
Yeah, so this is, I guess we're putting this in front of you for your comments, and then we'll see if getting Metro North approval is infeasible.
Well, there's a lot
We
of
would have to make
lot of drainage issues. The drainage of the new retaining wall and how that gets around the building, and so the draining. You need to talk to Doug about the drainage.
So just in general, I can give you a rough
Yeah, go
outline of
ahead.
how the drainage is going to work. So the drainage that is coming down the hill is being
Hey,
brought
John,
into our
John, sorry, you're taking it around, but we need to know that there's going to be no impacts to the existing and where you would tie in also. I mean, if you can get Metro North's approval.
Okay. Okay. So right now, Hudson's strategy, as I understand it, is to take the water that is coming off-site down the hill, or actually that is still our site, but the steep part of our site, bring it into the system and put it into the storm system on Metro North. I think right now they're assuming that there's no change in volume there, and that water that is coming down the hill would be brought through the separator because of the size of a standard separator can handle that kind of load, and there isn't like a smaller, more cost-effective separator that would make sense of bringing, the off-site water. It's not off-site, but the uphill water around and just doing the separator for the parking. That's what discussions I've had with Hudson on that right now.
I'm actually John.
Oh, hey. Oh, you're right there. Good.
I'll bet it from Hudson. So with regard to the stormwater, the main area of concern is
Who's speaking?
Albeda from Hudson.
Okay.
Okay. With regard to
civil
the
engineer as opposed to me.
The runoff on the site currently runs around the back of the property, meaning you have that steep area just before the wall. It's heading towards the wall before it was heading to the back of the building and then being guided around the property. We'll look into the grading at the back of the wall to make sure that it swills around and goes around as it did before, essentially, because it would have had to go around the building regardless in the same manner as it would around the retaining wall. As far as stormwater system, we're so close to the body of water that slowing it down is not really a feasible solution, as then you're slowing it down to keep up with runoff from further up the site, other properties that are eventually flowing downhill. So slowing it down is not feasible. And then if you will, speeding it up or keeping it as it is not having a negative impact, as there's nobody effectively downstream of this property. And again, we're connecting into the catch basin.
Yeah, but can the pipes handle the load? The existing pipes in Metro North parking lot?
Do you have the capacities in the Metro North system?
That we don't, but it's the same body of water. It's not really an increase.
Yeah, but you can't say that you're not increasing it if you don't know what the flows are.
Again, we'd have to do a pre and post analysis to see what the flow rates are pre and post of the site. But if it's a reduction, then it's not making things any worse than it is. If there's an issue now, we can't speak to that, but.
Well, the drainage issue needs to be calculated and satisfied to Doug and Ed. And
So Abdul, what I would understand is that you're going to produce a pre and post for us on this, and we would submit that as part of the next submission.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it.
Okay. Okay.
Speaking of the retaining wall, you do know it's in the residential zone?
The retaining wall is still in the business district. So the line, it's at, near the line between the residential and the business, but it's in the business district. Caesar.
Looks like it just crosses over, John. If you go to Hudson's plan, you could see that line.
Okay, let me take a look. Okay, I can share screen so we look at the same thing. Okay, sorry, I'm just gonna move some things around.
It's the bottom left corner.
So, okay,
There's a belt wire
so we
crossing
can
from-
modify that to make
Yeah.
sure it's within, you're saying right here, it's crossing over, okay. Our intention was to stay within the business district. So we'll make sure that that's the case.
Okay.
Yep, okay.
When you excavate to put the wall up, we're concerned with the quality of the soil. So some sampling needs to be done. You can coordinate with Doug as to what kind of sampling of the soil. Being Metro North was involved, we would not know. You know, there were, back in the day, there were not too much concern with what was dumped where by not just Metro North, but others. And this was, you know, certainly within the area of the tracks that one is concerned. And another issue about excavating that area, there's a knotweed, and it's an invasive species that has to be destroyed before it possibly could migrate to other properties when you get rid of the soil. So you can't just, the knotweed has to be killed before it is removed or transported. And that's a DEC requirement. From what I understand, it's not a recommendation, it's a mandate.
Okay.
And there's a little strip of soil in the front. I mean, this is not a requirement, but it would be nice if you could manage to plant something in that little strip of soil, ornamental grasses or whatever.
Okay, I mean, that strip is not on our property, but maybe we can discuss that with
Okay.
Metro North. Actually, it's in our easement area. It's in our
Okay.
easement area, so I think you can do something there.
Anybody on the
Okay.
board have a comment? Oh, excuse me, John, you have more presentation?
I mean, I'm not sure. I think, you know, we just received the comments today. I think they're all pretty self-explanatory. And I think the ones that I don't understand are things that I can do offline. Just so you understand, we do have a traffic consultant on the project, so we'll respond to the traffic questions, the I-width questions with that traffic consultant. And for people, for the board's information, the use of the parking is for the adjacent building, the Trent building, the proposed use, and it's the type of parking that it is it's for tenants of that building. So they are not new parkers that are finding access to this as if it was a real retail space or something that comes in and out. They're sort of parkers that can be trained to access their specific numbered spot. And so it just changes the reason that you're seeing atypical widths and difficult spots is because there's an understanding that it's not for the general public, it's for renters who have access to specific spots. So my understanding from the traffic consultant is that's more typical.
This would not be commuter traffic open.
Right, right.
Is there some kind of, will there be some kind of permit system or a gate like on the other side of the tracks on the
yeah, I assume we could talk to the owner as to whether they think it should be controlled in that way, but my understanding that it was going to be numbered spots, so you'd have access to specific numbers.
Okay, in order for it to be a net increase in parking for the building, is there any plan for the parking behind the building that's up on, directly behind the building, there's, behind the Trent building, there's parking now. There's no, what's the plan for that area? To remain as parking, or is there any plans for that?
No, that's to remain as parking at the moment. This is an ad. This is a parking ad for the complex.
Could you have some sort of statement in there that parking, the existing parking is to be preserved?
Right. Yes, we can do that.
All right. Any comment?
We can do that. And then just quickly, and this may not be something that's in the planning board's purview, but because the parking is related to the Trent building and not to this specific building, the location of the accessible parking, we could look at that relative to the entire combined facility and try to get the accessible parking closer to accessible routes. Or we could show accessible parking within this lot, which would meet the ADA requirement. Is there any concern about, would you rather us look at it being, looking at moving the accessible ones up to the upper parking lot where it would make more sense for someone who actually had required wheelchair access to the lower level? We can do it either
with the property ownership of the properties.
Yeah, I think if it's what ends up happening is it sort of requires us to put the accessible down in this building because it's not under single ownership. There's two different ownership groups.
Exactly. I mean, you'd have to look into that issue as well.
Okay. All right. So I think we'll just keep it. We'll just provide the ADA on the site of the existing. Okay.
Oh, I had another question. There's a couple of little parking places that were previously approved with a retaining wall on the northwest corner of the building. Is that
in this area?
Yes. Where's your cursor? I didn't see it.
That permit was never activated, John.
Are you gonna
Right. So
build?
those were never built, Caesar, and that was never followed through on. So these are being proposed as new.
All right. So is that part of this proposal? Those three spots there?
Yes, they are.
Can you include all the information that you had in the last approval on that?
We can. I think this is showing. Yeah, it's showing a different.
Okay.
It's a different situation, Ed, because of other, in order for
actually, I was thinking more of the drainage because it was on rock. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I should have more.
There was like a gas line or something that went through there too, wasn't there?
There's a gas line that is connected to a propane tank that feeds the rooftop unit, so it's got to be relocated.
Yeah. Okay.
It's propane gas piping.
Right.
So that past approval is something that's you have to do differently now.
Right. It doesn't work as it originally was drawn because of the access to these spots that are near it. So it wouldn't work.
Well, it would have lapsed anyway, Ed, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no, I was more concerned about just so they don't have to.
I'm just telling Caesar, I think the last one would have lapsed.
Yeah, yes. No, but Marianne, I was more concerned about just not reinventing the wheel.
I understand. I understand what you were saying.
There was permeable pavement or something over there, wasn't there?
And that's all I was worried about.
All right, and you're going to provide details on the wall in that little area?
Yes, right. When it's designed, we can give you details on that.
That would be nice.
I mean, the reason, Doug, I don't know if we want to discuss this now, the change that was being proposed before in the front area was relatively small amount of new impervious surface, so we proposed the permeable pavers. We could look at permeable pavers for this new impervious in the rear yard. I mean, our feeling was that it was in a different scope than what that first project was.
Have test holes been dug back there, John?
Has what?
Have you had test holes dug in the back of the building?
No, we haven't done any test holes.
Only because maybe there's a possibility to do retention or detention back there underneath the driveway.
Right.
The new parking area.
Yeah, I think Hudson's position is it doesn't make sense to slow it down, and maybe they don't think they can infiltrate. I guess we could see if.
Yeah, we'll have to see what the numbers come out, but I mean, access. I don't know if you can access Metro North, so I wouldn't want to.
Yeah, I didn't think of it before, but Hudson was saying about the water coming down the hill. It's coming down now, is going around the building. It's the same water that's going to go around the wall. But isn't there new water falling on the parking, on the pavement of the extended parking beyond the current footprint of the building? It's going to rain on the. So that's new water.
Yeah. And it's
Where's
being
that new
collected.
water?
That's being collected.
That's being collected and treated, but reducing the rate of runoff on the site, given where it's going eventually, doesn't make too much sense if we're doing a system that slows it down. Again, looking at runoff from further up the hill.
If you had those flows and peak flow.
Assuming as Ed said, assuming the Metro North pipe And you said, well, if it takes it now, it'll take it later, but.
Yeah,
But
that's not science.
But today is new drainage from those new parking spaces extending out beyond the buildings. That's new water.
I got you, but relative to the watershed, it won't be a significant increase. But again, we'll look at the pre and post numbers.
Well,
You have to determine what the watershed is and what the peak, when the peak comes through to see if you're actually beating the peak or not.
Yep, you got it. We'll take a look at it.
Okay.
and one last thing from my point of view, Mary Ann, you can elaborate on it. An EAF is going to be necessary, environmental assessment form needs to be filled out for this project, Mary Ann.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Yeah, they're only because usually we don't need them because it's just residential, but this isn't a 1 or 2 family, so we need an environmental assessment form.
You got it.
Kevin, any comment? Kevin,
No,
didn't you
I
have
mean-
something about the stairwell on the east wall facing Buckout?
Say again, Caesar, I'm sorry.
The stairwell on the east wall, the east side of the building that faces Buckout, the way it may look from Buckout Street, the stairwell.
Is that visible, John, from Buckout?
No, I think it follows the contours of the site that's there now, so I don't believe it would be visible from Buckout.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically down in there's a very steep hole there right now, and it's just cutting out some retaining of that area, and it just sort of follows that grade down. So I don't think it's visible.
Okay, thank you. Dan?
Just a quick question. The storm drains in front of the building, those are actually Metro North drains, not town drains?
Right.
Oh, really? Okay.
The property line is here, Dan. It's actually going through these parking areas and this retaining wall.
Oh, I see. Okay. I got you.
Yeah, that really limits what we can do with the front of the building.
Okay, I got you. Interesting. Okay.
George?
John, what about lighting?
We haven't shown anything on that yet. We'll take a look at that and see. I mean, it would need to, certainly not be heading up into the residential side. I think we're so low and so well covered that if you just did careful shielded down lights or low lighting in that wall on the rear, you shouldn't have any impacts there.
You should show that and include the stair lighting as well.
Yeah, going up this thing here. Yeah.
No, down below. Yeah, at the top left.
The stair that,
Right.
the stair that.
But I think sorry, Caesar, you broke up there a little bit.
The northeast corner stairwell is going to be lighting on.
Right. Right. I think in terms of lighting that, again, we would try to light it from step lights. We would try to keep everything very low to the ground and dark sky compliant.
Anything else, George?
Nope, just think that, as you know, that neighbors will be very interested in seeing what this looks like and how it impacts them. So anything you can do to show what you're proposing and the effects that they're going to see is important.
Right. So right now, all of the modifications that are being proposed are not in view from the upper side, given the tree cover and the grade. So we'll provide a section through that, and we can provide a visual impact analysis, but I think it'll most likely just be 2 photos that show the same thing because there's no real, the rest of the site is so far up the hill. But we can provide stuff to clarify that, make people comfortable with that.
All right. And there's engineering issues, structural and column protection, but it won't. You'll need to go through that with Ed at some point.
Yeah, I mean that we're assuming is a building permit requirement, but we'd have to show it to make sure that the maneuverability still works and the columns are protected.
All right. Any comment from the public? Is anybody out there, Sarah?
There's nobody raising their hand and there are no comments in the chat.
And anything else from anybody on the board?
Nope.
John, you had anything to add?
No, thanks. Well, thanks for these comments and we'll get moving on it.
So it's pretty clear what you need?
I think so. There's a few questions I have at the periphery, but I think I can speak with Ed and Doug and get those clarified.
And just to be clear, the approval from Metro North to use their system is critical.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Could
All right.
could everybody on the board stay on for a couple of minutes, including Ed and Mary Ann
I'm
and
hungry.
Doug? Just stay on for a few minutes. Haven't closed the meeting yet. Sarah, are we alone?
Not yet.
We're live. If you want to.
You just put it to a panel.
Why don't you adjourn the meeting and have an advice of council session? It's the cleanest way.
Okay, I'm doing what Mary Ann just said. I'm closing the meeting and we'll have a executive session.
No, advice to
Advice to
council
council.
session.
Advice of council. Okay,
Do executive session, you need minutes and everything.
Hang on, just hang
Okay.
on a few minutes. Patty, you're still on, and Kathy, you're still on.